What's going on, everybody? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by NetSuite. If you are a business owner, you probably don't need anybody to tell you that running a business is anything but easy. But you might be making it harder on yourself than necessary. Don't let QuickBooks and spreadsheets slow you down anymore. It's time to upgrade to NetSuite. Stop paying for multiple systems that don't give you the information you need when you need it. Ditch the spreadsheets and the old software that you have outgrown. Now is the time to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. NetSuite gives you the visibility and control over your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more. Everything you need all in one place instantaneously. Whether you're doing millions or hundreds of millions in revenue, save time and money with NetSuite. Join the over 24,000 companies using NetSuite right now. If that sounds interesting to you, you want to learn more, you want to check it out, let NetSuite show you how they'll benefit your business with a free product tour at netsuite.com/clearedhot. You can schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/clearedhot. This episode is also brought to you by Omax Cryo-Freeze. If you live with chronic pain, you already know it is the worst. It's more than just feeling uncomfortable. It can affect your entire life. And I bet many of the listeners probably have some type of pain that has prevented them from relaxing or sleeping or stopped them from exercising. Perhaps it's been ongoing for a few weeks and it hasn't improved with any of the forms of treatment that you have tried. I do jiu-jitsu about 5 days a week, and let me just tell you, I'm pretty familiar with what I would describe as chronic pain. If you're looking for a solution, check out Omax Health. If you are looking to get rid of nagging muscles and joint pain immediately while providing long-lasting recovery, then you need to try the natural breakthrough pain-relieving solution, Cryo-Freeze Cbd Roll-On, developed by Omax Health. This non-prescription triple-action pain relief roll-on is specifically formulated to block pain receptors, reduce inflammation, and improve muscle and joint flexibility. The best part, it's 100% natural, CBD-powered remedy that works its magic within 10 minutes of application, and relief can last up to 8 hours, much longer than your traditional over-the-counter products. Omax Health is offering the listeners of the podcast 20% off a full bottle of Cryo-Freeze CBD Pain Relief Roll-On. This discount also applies towards any product site-wide. Just go to omaxhealth.com today and enter the code CLEAREDHOT. That is OMAX health.com and enter the code CLEAREDHOT to get 20% off Cryo-Freeze and anything else you want site-wide. Anyone from athletes to your grandma can benefit from this immediate pain relief. You have pain that won't go away, then you qualify for Omax Cryo-Freeze. Simply roll it over where it hurts and ice out the pain. No messy creams or horrible fragrances like some of those other products. Cryo-Freeze works within 10 minutes of application, improving physical training, recovery, and performance. Go to omaxhealth.com and enter the code CLEAREDHOT to get 20% off Cryo-Freeze and anything else you want site-wide. I'm telling you, this product is the real deal, so go to omaxhealth.com and enter the code CLEAREDHOT. 20% off and anything else you might be interested in site-wide. Last but not least, this episode is brought to you by Magic Spoon.
0% sugar.
That is John Dudley in the background, and he is correct. There actually is 0 sugar, 11 grams of protein, and 3 net grams of carbs in each serving.
I love it. Had it at Peter Attia's. Awesome.
Okay, John Dudley's been drinking, but I digress. Well, we've actually both been drinking, but let's talk about Magic Spoon. When I was growing up, I liked snacks. Do you still like snacks, Dudley?
Love them. Cereal, top of the list.
Problem is this. My engine burns a little bit slower than it used to. So what goes into my body actually is important. So I'm trying to cut down on carbs, sugar, and unhealthy food. And when I did that, I realized that there was nothing left that I'd like to eat that was tasty.
If you're going to spoon, you want that magic spoon.
Okay. So, yes, there's 2 types of spoon. The spoon that Dudley's talking about, and then the spoon that you can eat Magic Spoon with. You got 4 flavors. Actually, more than that, but here's 4 that I think you should choose from. Cocoa, fruity, frosted, and blueberry. What's your favorite, Dudley?
Fruity.
This is obviously true. It tastes amazing, and I actually have had, 50 people at this point reach out to me and say, is it actually delicious? You've had it, Dudley. How was it?
Delicious.
Yeah. Keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. Take my word for it. It's awesome. Go to magicspoon.com/clearedhot to grab a variety pack, and then you can try all of those that we listed today. And be sure to use the promo code clearedhot at checkout to get free shipping.
/fruity.
Not /fruity at all. It's just magicspoon.com/clearedhot. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it's backed with 100% happiness satisfaction guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. magicspoon.com/clearedhot and use the code clearedhot for free shipping. My guest today is Todd Fox, a man that I met through Henry Akins. And if you are in the jiu-jitsu sphere of the world, you'll probably recognize that name. He was one of the original Rickson black belts. Todd used to be Henry's roommate in the LA area way back in the day. But before that, he was in the Marine Corps. Obviously, he is in the jiu-jitsu world. He's been at it for 25 years. I kind of lost count about how many stripes that he had on his black belt. After leaving the Marine Corps, he started working in the EP or executive protection world, started his own company, did some law enforcement time in there as well, and he's also an author. There are two places that you can check him out. ToddFox.com. That's Todd with two Ds. Actually, I'm looking at Todd, TODDA Fox.com for his personal page. And on the business side, Tour Protection, normal spelling on both of those, .com, or on Instagram at Tour Training. Pretty fascinating individual, diverse background, and some of the stories that he had on this podcast were relatively unbelievable. So I'm going to turn it over. Episode number 162 with Todd Fox. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke.
Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby. Give it to me. I need it. You're cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
Mr. Fox, I'm stoked you're here.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you for being my partner today in class as well. And thank you for the role.
That's awesome.
I'm going to tell you right now, the people that I rolled with after you did not enjoy the little tune-up that you gave me of the elbow and rib position, or actually hip position. All I did was intentionally try to get to that, what would be belly facing away from you, and then adjust up.
Pressure.
And then I would just wait.
Predator.
Well, here's the thing. I weigh what I weigh. I try to roll light, and I'm using air quotes for people who are listening, but I'm sorry. I weigh what I weigh. And I was talking with Travis, my coach, about this, and I think actually it might have been with Henry. He's like, listen, here's the two big lies in jiu-jitsu. That weight doesn't matter and strength doesn't matter. He's like, bullshit. They both do. And if you're heavy, use it.
100%. That's your tool. Why would you throw your tool away? That makes no sense. You
I don't
tell a
sweat
small
when I
guy
lay
not
down.
to go fast.
Yeah, when I just lay there, I don't sweat as much.
You had your sweat on today, but you are deceivingly heavy. Like you're cross-eyed when we were working that position, and I told you to pull your elbow in and push your hips in. Did you hear me? You took my breath away. It's great.
It's now I just need that technique in every position possible.
It's coming. It's coming.
The stories I've heard of Rickson through Henry, which I'm sure at some point we'll talk about how you met Henry and all that, because Henry was the great connector, which is allowing this to be here. Almost all of them, or even when you were showing the counter to the counter, the arm bar, it's like connection, not working hard, letting gravity do the work for you, exhausting your opponent / enemy's energy bar, which is great in concept, but goddamn if it's not hard to figure out when you're rolling around with another human being.
It's crazy though how simple it is, and it's right there. And you're like, I should have known that. I should have known that. That makes sense.
Yeah, just that adjustment. I was thinking about it. Why am I so low? And I realized it's just because when I turn my hips over and I end up oriented towards their feet, that's usually just where I am, and I never think to make that space. I'd push my hips back a little bit, but like I was saying, it was because I wanted to get my knee across at some point. I wasn't actually thinking about applying connection or pressure at their torso.
That pressure is crazy. I couldn't talk.
Damn. Like I said, all you sons of bitches out there who do jiu-jitsu, I'm coming for you in 15 to 26 years. How long have you been at it?
About 25 years now. So I started with Rodrigo Vaghi in 1996.
So I know people, I was surprised. I'll be honest. There's more people who are interested in jiu-jitsu who follow this podcast than I thought. Because actually they hit me up about it all the time, and I made a single run of rash guards, and they were instantly gone, and people were hitting me up. I was like, oh, okay.
Good for
I'm not
you.
the only person who digs this. But lineage, so where does that tie into the tree?
Okay, so Rodrigo Vaghi is a 6th degree black belt under Hickson who came from Humaita. And I was in the Marine Corps, and I did a lot of B-billets, and one of them was recruiting duty. And right next door to the recruiting station was a jiu-jitsu school. And at the time, either late 95 or early 96, Rodrigo had just moved here, didn't speak any English. And I was on recruiting. I was also teaching karate at a karate studio. And I worked with the bare knuckle guy who was a former Marine, former cop. And he said, listen, you need to go check that out. I can't teach you what they're doing. I don't know it, but I've seen the UFC and I've seen what that family does. You need to go check it out. And so I went over to visit him, in uniform, my Marine Corps uniform, went over to visit. And he kind of just smiled and shook his head. Oh, okay, yeah, you come train. And I showed up one day, came in, hey, I'm ready to train.
Pull that mic closer to your face.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot.
I need to be trained.
So here's the thing. I need you to have a connection to the microphone.
Yeah. 2 hands? Okay.
That's shooter's choice. I'm not going to judge. You can go
Offhand?
2-hand. You could go Western if you wanted to. It's
No skills. No skills.
So what city was this in?
St. Louis.
Okay.
Outside of St. Louis, in St. Louis County.
Okay.
So Rodrigo was at the time.
How did he
just in St.
land
Louis.
there?
Kind of the standard way anybody does. His mom married a Brazilian guy that had moved to St. Louis and opened up a Brazilian restaurant.
Churrascaria or whatever they're called?
Churrascaria, yeah.
It's basically what I said, except you said it right.
Yes. Meat.
Yeah. Green tab, red tab.
That's it. Go, stop.
Yeah.
And they don't even, in Brazil, they don't listen to that. You got red, they're still coming up. You chicken hearts and whatever else they give you. So
those restaurants are the closest I've ever gotten to eating myself to death.
100%. And then after, there's so much sodium in it to maintain that meat.
Yeah, it gets worse.
After, oh my God, it's brutal. And then you're supposed to go train and you're just bloated and like, fuck, I gotta train.
Use with caution.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I think of, from what I know of, actually, you know what? I guess my jiu-jitsu journey is shallow, but I often hear people talking about SoCal as the mecca in the U.S. of jiu-jitsu. So I assumed that it's and then Hickson was teaching, and Henry talks about being in L.A. So I guess it just, St. Louis to me seems like a random place for somebody at that level to be landing.
It was just by chance, and another Brazilian guy named Luciano was running kind of a striking school, and he wanted the groundwork. And he met Rodrigo's mom and heard that her son was a black belt in Brazil under the Gracie family. He's teaching at Humaita. And he said, hey, give him this offer. I want to bring him here to St. Louis. So he'll be with his mom and he can teach jiu-jitsu and we'll pay him this and I'll structure all this business. I just want him here teaching. So he came very early on in the scheme of jiu-jitsu, and he shouldn't have been in St. Louis because, it's a small town. It's 300,000 people. But the connection was there. And because there wasn't jiu-jitsu in the Midwest, it was huge. And he got all these guys that were very tough guys descending upon the school to learn this. And it was a game of attrition for him too, because he tried to apply Brazilian methods. So instead of running a business, he essentially forced 90% of the people out because everybody's puking all class. And so he only kept the toughest guys. I'm
not going to lie, there's a portion of me that completely supports that. However, what you nailed it on the head, because Travis, we'll talk about the origins of SBG. Like the first class that he and his brother showed up to, they were like stick fighting each other. The number of people who will come back for a second class is small.
Dude, so
awesome though. Is like, to me, I'm like, yes, but as a business owner, that's a
horrible
hard
business
pass.
model.
Yeah.
And to Rodrigo's credit, that's not the case anymore. Things have softened up and slowed down, and he has a business model that now has women and children and things of that nature. But initially, he had like a piranha in the front door and like drop stuff in there. And then he got a fish. I don't know if you've ever heard of these. They're called snakefish. And the snakefish would eat rats every day. And now I'm like, I don't know. And kids would, try to come up and put their fingers in there. Like, maybe you don't want that there. And we kept it for a long time. It's crazy. Doors locked, fights happening, people getting choked out. Him not speaking English was kind of in the early days. As you're talking to him, and you probably already know this, but people that don't speak the language, if you don't smile at them, and I'm talking to somebody nice, but I'm kind of frowning a little bit as I'm talking, all of a sudden he perceives that as aggression. And so if you didn't smile at him when you were talking to him, it was like, boy, buddy, what you said to me? and you're like, whoa, no, I didn't mean anything by it, Rodrigo.
Yeah.
And it was a different time. And the first, I'm sure you had this experience. Everybody's had this experience. But the first time that I went in there, I went to roll with him. I say, hey, I'm here to train. Let's train you. Buddy, you don't train with me. You train with my guys. I'm like, okay. And he points me, this is where it gets worse. He points me to this kid who's maybe 17, maybe 150 pounds. And I was
You'd probably dismiss visually.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm a Marine. I'm a tough guy. I fight bare knuckle karate. I've been in millions of fights. I'm good to go. Okay, no problem. So I go with the 17-year-old kid.
session.
Yes. First roll, slap hands, go. Moving. I'm fine. I put him on the ground. I start to roll his leg. Choke, triangle, immediately. This little 17-year-old, 150-pound kid's just playing with me. And you know what the first thought is? I don't know about you, but me, this is a fluke. This is just, I messed up. Something happened. It's not right. Roll again. Da-da-da. I last 30, 45 seconds longer, and he does the same thing again to me. So the hardest part for me was walking back in that door, with my manhood intact, because you're like, holy fuck, I just got my ass whooped by this kid.
And you don't understand how or why.
No idea. I had no idea. And I went with more guys and they beat my ass. And it took weeks and months and close to a year before now you're the predator and they're the prey. It takes a while, that transition.
It's interesting because, as an adult male, you'll look at another adult male and like, well, he's got arms. I got arms. He has legs. I have legs. We probably move the same way. We have the same flexibility. I'm going to beat this dude's ass. And then you're like, I can't do anything. What the fuck?
What the fuck over?
And it's hard to do. And people who don't do jiu-jitsu will hear that and they'll be like, you guys need to shut up about jiu-jitsu. There's nothing magical about it, which I agree. It's not magic. But if you haven't had that experience of somebody who has the same tools that you do physically, but can use them in a different way, and regardless of how much you don't want something to happen, it does. It's a challenging environment.
Dude, I like you, but I'm going to disagree with you. Jiu-jitsu is magic, and especially in the early days.
Harry Potter type magic?
No, not Harry Potter type magic. I know it. You don't know it. There's no way. Even guys that are fighting MMA today, all of these guys are studying how to defeat it, how to deal with it. So if everything else is equal, if size equals, strength equals, explosions equal, if you're accustomed to being aggressive, it turns the tide. And in the early days, you have to remember we were fighting against guys that didn't know jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And so
that's where I would say
magic.
It creeps. In that environment, I would say it creeps towards magic, especially on the receiving end, because they will not, it's just like, poof, what happened?
Yeah. Look, 1, 2, I get it. The guy punched me with his left. He punched me with his right. But now this guy's doing something. His body's under here, his legs here, his arms here. None of this makes sense because viscerally, it's not right to be on your back fighting. Everything in you wants to be on top and fight. So it's crazy. Now this guy just went to a submissive position and he's doing whatever he wants to me.
Yeah. And I'm waking up asking, did I win? I love Chris Howder's saying, he's like, if you're looking at the ceiling, you're losing. And when it comes to a competition, it's like, yes. No, it's been awesome. I wish I found, we were talking about, we had a coffee before. As with many things in my life, I wish I had found it earlier. For me, what I have enjoyed more about it is the mental, it's like a mental health scrub to be able to go in there and problem solve and just think about that. And then physically, I was dripping sweat today because obviously going too hard. And I like to tell people it's metabolically, I just run at a higher rate. It's not that I'm trying too hard. Yeah.
You're just husky. That's all.
But to me, I've gotten, I think, more benefit from the emotional stability, mental stability. It's confidence building. Like the fight that almost happened that you were watching, the two peacocks going at each other.
In the parking lot this morning.
Which was right next to the gym. And I was saying that would be awesome if they banged it out because Travis could walk up and give at least one business card away. But listen, your bottom game's a little bit weak. You got swept and mounted. So come with us.
Come on over here. Yeah. And this was literally in front of the school.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I enjoy violence. I do as a person, but I get it out in in a situation. I don't want to hurt anybody, but I enjoy violence. And
Violence isn't wrong. Violence out of context
Yeah.
is what is wrong. Violence out of context is what people hate. Humans love violence. They watch it. They yearn for it. They engage in it. It's violence out of context. You beating up the 10-year-old Girl Scout who you didn't want to buy her cookies. That's violence out of context.
But like the hour of open mat we just did, like I don't have any desire to argue with somebody in a parking lot. It's like, dude, go have a good day. Like,
No,
see
you get it
later.
out. But one thing you said is very true, which is you come in and it's problem solving, right? Because you've got all these variables and you manipulate the variables by adding variables or removing variables to change the outcome. And as you know, with like something like OODA loop, that cycle is it's ongoing. It's not like it's OODA and then you do your thing. That's not it. You're not going to get to act. It's constantly changing. And so you're constantly reassessing and you're learning new things. And then, oh yeah, this was right, but it wasn't right in that situation, in that position. Yeah, that's right in this position. And so that problem solving element is really stimulating. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, and for people listening, OODA loop is it was actually created by a guy named John Boyd, who was a fighter pilot. It's observe, orient, decide, and act. And I find that most people, I think, naturally think this way, but they don't realize it. And when you can put a structure to how your brain is working, I find that it helps. Well, the goal of the OODA loop is to make it as small as possible. A fast
Whoever cycles through it first wins the fight. And that was the theory in dog fights with Colonel Boyd, right? Yep. I can cycle through it. I observe, I orient, I decide what I'm going to do, I act. And if I cycle through that quickest, I win the fight, generally speaking.
Because you're expanding the OODA loop of the other person. It's exactly what's going on in jiu-jitsu too.
It's a constant OODA loop, and it's fast cycling.
Yeah. So your journey, you go in. He tells you train with his boys, and were you hooked day one or
No, man. I couldn't figure out what was happening. So I went back. Actually, I told the guy that sent me, who was a great man, a great mentor. I've had a lot of great mentors.
Same.
And this guy was a Marine and a cop, and he kind of colored outside the lines a bit. In fact, we got kind of not kicked out of the karate school, but moved to another location because he was doing bare knuckle and he wasn't doing point and kata and stuff like that. He's like, that shit doesn't work. We're doing this. And the owners, fair play to them, the owner said, that's not marketable and people don't want to see that or do that. You guys go over there. And then he had the balls to tell his student, hey, forget about what I'm teaching you right now. You know enough of this. Go learn that. And so then getting that experience, having that experience, where do I go from? I don't even know what the hell just happened to me. So I've got to suck up my manhood, my ego, and I got to go back in again. And I go back in again and get beat and beat and beat. And it was probably months before you understood what was happening. You didn't make the same mistakes again.
Yeah.
And at some point you could stop it. And then at some point, not just stop it, but actually start attacking. Not that the attacks would work. And eventually you have the new wave. So I'm sure you know this in your school. You have this wave come in that you're in, and then there's a wave in front of you and behind you. And as more waves come in, obviously you have more of these.
You come to your first class, you're like, why are people looking at me like that? And then a few months later, you're the one like, look.
Yeah, boy.
Yeah. There's some truth to that. And plus you do, the first few months of the journey, let me tell you right now, people who are going to start, you're going to be on the bottom, not in a dominant position. It's not going to be incredibly comfortable, and you will be looking for people that you can do that to when they are new in the spot that you were just looking.
That's nature. That's how it works.
How did he structure the classes?
So when I first came in, it was basically 30 minutes of intense warm-ups where most people were puking, literally. And he had two big, 50-gallon containers at either end of the gym. And people would be doing like bear crawls for 10 minutes, then wheelbarrows for 10 minutes. And we go through all of these exercises, calisthenics, for a good 30 minutes. And then after that, you would do 100 arm bars from the mount. You do 100 arm bars from the guard. You do 100 triangles. Then he would teach one move and one variation to the move. That was it. And then that was Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday was sparring, and usually about 90 minutes. And you come in, you don't talk, and he wouldn't let you. So normally guys will interact between rounds. You weren't allowed to talk. So it was you spar, you find another partner, you spar. So
very strict
very, very
protocol.
Strict. There was never music. There was never talking. There was nothing. And his famous line, Rodrigo, if you're watching, boy, want popcorn, Diet Coke? Go somewhere else, buddy. Here to train, buddy. So he was very serious about it. Now, of course, Rodrigo's in his 50s. He's relaxed. Great teacher. Great teacher.
Yeah.
But his method in the early days was basically to make you tough and understand the fundamental, basic core concepts. And consequently, he had great fighters for BJJ and the gi, no-gi submission wrestling, and MMA. At the time, it wasn't MMA. It was Vale Tudo and no holds barred. So the fights we had were called NHB. But yeah, he had great fighters through that process.
You can't build a beautiful building on a shitty foundation. Like we were talking about, people wanting to skip all of this stuff. And I see it all the time in shooting. People will show up with the newest salient arms, fill in the blank. Their race gun, even though they don't do race gun shooting, but they have this bitchin' milled out, stippled, red dot, ported.
Absolutely.
And they want to, I don't know how many times this has happened to me, where somebody will come and they'll say, and I teach very few people how to shoot, just because largely it's a long investment. Just like the only people I've taught recently is Travis and his family, because I want to, expose them to something that I do, and it's going to take a lot of time, just like they're giving me time out of their day.
He's definitely investing in you, and I think that's a fair trade.
So it's the least I can do. Oftentimes people come like, go to the range, I'm like, okay, today we're going to dry fire. And they're like, yeah, but I'm here to shoot steel. Motherfucker, we'll get to the steel, but you don't know how to hold a gun, align your sights, pull the trigger, let alone stand in a position that's not going to let this little 9mm drive you off of your toes onto your heels and then backwards. We got a lot of work to do. They're like, yeah, nah.
Yeah,
but they'll order 2 more race guns.
And that's it. That's the same as the situation I was talking to you about this morning, which is I have a guy with a very expensive gun who wants to train, who's got way more guns than I do. He's got 37,000 guns squirreled in every place. But then the holster's so fucked up. You can get your finger in the trigger guard. It breaks off.
Yeah.
It's canted so that someone you're fighting can pull it right. Like, that gun does you no good. Just let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
Simple.
Well, it's the basics that'll keep you alive. I'm not an expert in firefights by any imagination, but the ones that I have been involved in and the people that I have talked to, it's not a crazy high-speed tactic that gets people out of those things. It's the simplest course of action, which is built on the simplest of foundation.
Dude, what isn't about fundamentals?
Yeah.
What can you be really good at and skip the fundamentals?
Probably like sleeping, eating, perhaps.
Eating, fair. Eating, yeah.
So, how long did you stay at that school for?
I'm still at this school. So just like my...
Oh, that's right. Shit, you're still living there.
Yeah, I'm still there. So I took a journey to Hickson's because my instructor sent me there. Also because the Marine Corps sent me from one B billet to another. So I went from recruiting in St. Louis to what's called the motion picture liaison. So I'm sure you don't know this because nobody knows this, but basically there's an office on Wilshire Boulevard that has... in each branch has its own office, but in the Marines it was 3 Marines, in the Navy it was like 6 sailors, and then Air Force and Army and everybody else. And they basically what they do is they go out and they teach actors how to walk and talk and do these things. Yeah, and
let me guess, they don't get paid any additional Hollywood money for that, do they?
No. So and that's a good point. Actually, I was just talking to I mentioned Scott Fox to you, and we'll talk about him later. But Scott, who now is a technical advisor and an actor, he went and whatever he was making, the guy on set, let's see, he was making as a TA. Let's see, he's making $200,000-$300,000 a year. The advisor from the Navy would be making $50,000 a year. And
so because he probably was an E5.
Yeah, well, I was. I was an E5, and I was making like $30,000 or $40,000 a year, and I was teaching these guys how to do these things next to a retired Marine gunny who worked for JAG, a television show back in the 1900s, if you remember it. And basically he was making at that time $200,000 a year, and I was making $30,000 or $40,000 a year to do the same thing, teach them how to walk, talk, whatever. But the DoD approves it because they want to give support to that entity to make their branch look good. So it's kind of like a recruiting tool for them.
Top Gun changed the game in naval aviation. There's a reason why the military will give explicit support to some projects, like the Top Gun that's going to come out again. Pretty sure they got those F-18s from the Navy, They did, and it makes sense because I'm sure they stroked a check, but they'll get so many eyes on that. That'll open up eyes to the next generation of aviators. I get it.
I didn't understand it when I started. It's like, that makes no sense. Why are we giving them our assets? Why are we doing this? Well, we have a training mission. We use it as a training mission. They can't pay DoD for this. So what do? They give MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, basically pastime activities for military. They give that money to MWR because they can donate to MWR. They just can't.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let's say at the time there was a guy, and I'm sure he's still out there, Donald Belisario, who created Magna PI and all these other things, and Mark Horowitz, and they had the show. And so they couldn't pay DOD. DOD wanted the coverage. They wanted it to be positive, accurate. There was a guy sitting at DOD at the Pentagon named Phil Stroop who would approve scripts and say, yes, this is a positive depiction of the Marine Corps or the Navy or whatever. And then he would send it to us, and we would scrub it. And you guys made fun of me for this. I asked where the head was. But
No, I didn't make fun of you. I knew exactly what it was. People are like,
what the hell's that guy talking about?
yeah, like a head? Like, we don't have any heads in here? And I was like, no, it's a Navy term for a bathroom.
Everybody's like,
Yeah.
no.
Just the two guys in the corner.
Yeah. No, but so if you said, let's say in the script, latrine, we would scratch it and say, we don't say latrine. You know, we don't say whatever they call the kitchen. We say the chow hall or whatever. So you
Put it
scrub
off the right-hand side of the ship. It's like, no,
Yes.
starboard, port, stuff like that. Yeah.
Correct. So you'd scrub it, and you go out there and you help them, and like, no, your ribbons and medals don't go like that, and no, you don't step with this foot, and just minor stuff. And then at the end of the day, the director can do whatever the fuck he wants because it needs to look sexy on TV, and so it's a struggle there. But it's approved through DOD. You're told, go out, do this, and I got cool gigs like JAG or like Born Identity. But I was doing
The first one?
Yes, the first one. So we shot the embassy scene in Prague, and we were using MSG Marines. MSG is a Marine Security Guard. So at the embassies, the
So
internal.
you were still in the military?
I was in the Marine Corps.
No shit.
Yeah.
With Matt Damon.
So I was sitting there. Matt took us out. I'm a very generous guy. Took all the Marines out and bought them drinks.
Oh,
and,
I remember this. So he was ended up like hanging off. Didn't he go to the roof or something like that?
Yeah. So all of the guys, except for a couple stunt actors, were actually real Marines on MSG duty in Europe at the time of that scene. So they did like a ladder well clearing and then a roof scene and bits and pieces. Not a whole lot, but we corrected a few things, and then we were told, hey, it's going to be this way, right? You know how it goes. Like, okay, all right. So so got to cool stuff like that. So at that time when I was in LA, Henry, as you know, was my roommate, and I was training at Hickson's.
How did you two meet? We should collide the two worlds in. Henry Akins, as we were talking about, he's been on the podcast before. Awesome, savage black belt. He was Hickson's second American black belt?
He was probably the third, I think, because I think that two other guys, Kama and Chris, I think two guys were before him, so I think he was the third. But yeah, he was early days black belt from Hickson. So when I was in St. Louis, by the way, Rodrigo is a Hickson Gracie black belt, so it was a natural progression. Rodrigo at the time said I could only train with Hickson because back then you didn't train with other people. Like I wouldn't even come train at your gym today because that's not affiliated. Now it doesn't work that way. But so I went out there and I met Henry, but I met Henry in a weird way. Hickson had a couple tournaments, and I think it was like 97 and 98 or somewhere around that time, the Hickson Gracie International Tournament. And I met Henry in passing, and there was a guy named Al Tompkins, who is probably like a 3 or 4 stripe black belt now, who said, dude, if you ever go to LA, you have to meet Henry because you two are going to be best friends. You two are the same. You think the same. You act the same. You're the same. You remind me, you're laid back in these situations, but then you're really intense in these situations. And your sense of humor is similar. You're going to be best friends. And I'm like, okay, whatever. People say stuff like, okay, whatever. So I went out there, and he was one of the first people I met at Hickson's. And I'd met him, like I said, in the past at a tournament in passing. And then long story short, we're training together. Hawkson was another common training partner with us. And I was living in a shack, like literally a shack off the side of UCLA. And it was like $1,000 a month. And I think it was 250 square feet. And Henry had come over and was like, dude, you can't fucking live like this, bro. This isn't cool. Like I got a big apartment down the street. Like, why don't you just come over and stay with me? Okay. So when that lease expired, I went and ended up with Henry. But
is this the apartment that had the mats in the living room?
Yes.
Fuck yes.
Yeah. So there were these nasty sticky green mats, but they were great. And guys would come over. There was a couch there. And at the time that I was living with Henry, Shane Rice was there, who's also a Hickson black belt. And Steve Oliver would come in from New Zealand. And you probably don't know Steve, but Steve's this behemoth of a man. He's like, an 8%er in terms of body fat, but 300 pounds, like just this beast of a man.
I don't ever want to slap hands with somebody like that. Unless it's like a sprinting competition.
Yeah. And this house, that's it. It was just this slew of guys coming and going, training every day. Train at the academy, train at the house. Train at the academy, train at the house. And when Hickson was kind of hit and miss with his training, right? If the surf was good, he wasn't at the academy. And then obviously after Hoxton died, he wasn't around as much either. Yeah. And so guys would tend to spend more time away from the academy. And then when he'd show up, everybody would come in and descend upon, the mat. So we'd have one day 12 guys, and the next day Hickson was showing up. The day after Hickson had showed up, expecting he'd show up again, we'd have 100 people. So it'd be nuts. But yeah, Henry was the first person that I became friends with in LA when I moved out there.
What belt were you guys when you met?
I think we're a couple of stripes apart. So I think I would have been maybe either I was a 4-stripe blue belt and he was a 4-stripe purple belt or whatever. But about that time.
Belt off, okay.
Yeah, we're a belt off, maybe blue and purple or purple and brown.
Did you end up getting your black belt under Hickson?
No, I got it from, all my belts came from Rodrigo Vaglia. I always took my belts from him. And I don't know what you know about traditional martial arts, but you stay with one master, right? You always say, even though Hickson's, we were in his association and Rodrigo's his black belt, Rodrigo's my instructor. So
how would that work? You would train with Hickson, but then when it was time for you to get a belt, you would go back?
Yeah, well, I was bouncing back and forth.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
when I had some downtime, so imagine, you had leave or libo or whatever, you go home on leave and, I spend whatever I can, 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever it is. And I was training with Rodrigo. And then I got another job, long story, but I got another job where I was getting to come back home in the Marine Corps, and I was training more with him again. So I've really only trained in those two places and with Henzo because I spent a lot of time in New York, and so I got a lot of time at Henzo's. But
did he shut down his gym?
He did.
And that was the one with where Danaher was in the basement, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the main part was always in the basement. And he ended up building kind of like a Muay Thai space when you walk in up top. But yeah, there's multiple mat rooms. But down in the basement, in the back corner of the dungeon, is where Danaher and the boys used to train. John,
where they invented leg locks?
I don't know. I
love hearing you guys or Travis talking about it. It's because, again, I'm so new to it that honestly, one of the first people that I came across when I started a couple years ago was Gordon Ryan. Fucking murdering people.
Yes.
And what it immediately developed in me, without ever having experienced it, is a terrifying fear of heel hooks. Because he was
they're not unfounded.
But it's just like, oh my God, you can never let somebody touch your legs. And then you hear people talk about, like, listen, or you were talking about this morning, it goes in waves. Like people have had
it's
heels.
A cycle.
People have had heels since they've been doing jiu-jitsu and knees and like, I get it. Yeah.
Guys have been doing this since certainly before I was around, and I'm sure hundreds of years before that. But we trained heel hooks in '96. It was just part of training. You train footlocks and knee bars and all of that. It's just come kind of back around, just like all of the different guards and all the different attack methods. Like, we never saw footlocks for a while, and then we never saw wrist locks. Well, people stopped using them, and when somebody figured that out, they took advantage of it. It was a weakness. It was a vulnerability, a chink in the armor, and then somebody exploited it, and it became the big thing because they won.
Yeah, you'll catch somebody once or twice, but then they're going to get savvy pretty quick if they're a player. They'll be like, no, that shit's not going to happen again. Travis has wrist locked me more times than I would like to actually admit, but he favors it. And he was off the mats for a while, and he'll come back on and we'll roll. And I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch, tried to get me again. And it reminds me, like, I need to be constantly aware of this at all times.
And that couples with how you're fighting, because you're a defensive style fighter. So he's going to attack what he can because he's not getting your core. You're defending your core like a motherfucker, right? And because,
trying to.
And because you are, what do you leave out? Your extremities, right? Your feet are hanging out, your hands are hanging out, and therefore it becomes a target. So that's natural.
It. And it's totally legit. It's just it's like you would say today in class, having a few people that love the rolling under and attacking the lower body. I don't get to roll with them all the time, but every time I do, it does change. I'm like, oh, I need to be very, very careful with my lower body and maybe not give him my foot, because if I give him my foot, it's going to be a battle to get it out for sure.
Yeah.
How'd you find the Marine Corps? Why the Marines?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because we were talking earlier, you went in early, 17,
I did.
is
yeah. So I went in the DEP. I think
delayed entry program, people.
Sorry for the acronyms, guys.
That's right. I'll bust them out.
Thank you.
Yep.
I went in the DEP probably February-ish around my birthday time in I think '92, and I had the weirdest Marine Corps experience. I'll tell you, but the thing that drew me in about the Marine Corps is they had the longest boot camp. They had the best shooting. They had the highest fitness standards, right? And at the time, the JTF2 guys like to remind me that they're the best for long range shooting. But if you remember, Carlos Hathcock set all the records back in the day, in my time anyway.
I don't want to hear about it, Canadians. You shush.
Yeah, JTF2 boys.
Which I have nothing but love for. I'm just playing around. I don't need to get any messages from Canada. I love those guys.
Actually, they're really cool. They're really
amazing.
cool. I train with a guy in Ottawa that's one of the boys, and he's super, super cool, super low key. So yes, I do. I'm just talking shit. But so best standards pretty much for everything at the base level. And so I
By
was
a
drawn
big margin, I would say. Army would
Yeah,
be the
well,
close
well,
second,
well,
and then it
let's-
falls off the goddamn cliff.
So if we, at the time that I was going through, I don't know what it is now, but at the time I was going through, it was Marine Corps was a 13-week boot camp, 12 weeks and 5 days. And then it was Army was 8, Navy was 8, and then it was Air Force was 6. And so that was a standard. Then when you looked at shooting, Marine Corps was shooting out to 500 for quals, right?
Yep.
And I don't even know what the Navy was doing. I mean,
Do you really want to know? I'll tell you. It's well, I can only speak in my experience. In '96, I took a AR platform,
yeah.
chambered in .22, to an indoor range for my qual.
Is that Great Lakes?
It was Great Lakes.
Okay.
And they used to do, I believe, damn it was Florida and San Diego, both of which have been shut down. So Great Lakes is now the only option. But the qual for the Navy was, that target wasn't far away.
100?
Oh God, no, it was indoor.
Not even.
Oh no, it was maybe 25. Super. So they just made the target super small.
Yeah.
But a 5.56 rifle chambered in .22.
Yeah. So
Get your sharpshooter or expert ribbon on, depending on how you play it out.
fruit salad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the standards were higher, and I was drawn to that. And I knew a couple Marines. I didn't know anything about the Marine Corps, but I knew a couple Marines, and they were really squared away guys. And I had a cousin that was in the Marines, and he was super fit, traveled around the world, and he ended up in Somalia and a few other places, and would write me notes and tell me about that kind of stuff. So I was drawn to that. So that, I think that was kind of, yeah, that's the one, right? Those guys have all the cool stuff. And I didn't realize, because I didn't have that lineage, that they have the shittiest stuff, right? We have the shittiest gear, we have the hardest conditions, we have the shittiest PX, we have and obviously that's a good thing in the end, because you learn to do more with less until you get to a higher level and you realize that, okay, here's our budget, and we really can't do it with this, but we're going to do it anyway. And you make the budget, right? And then the next year they come back with less money to do the impossible. Meanwhile, the Air Force guys get this massive budget, and they say, we can't actually do it with this, so we're not going to do it. And then the next year they get a bigger budget. So
I've
there
always
are some pros and
heard
cons
that the
there.
key to the Air Force is that they build the runways last.
I believe that.
Because if they
Dude,
run out of
PXs,
money,
have you been in their housing?
my first deployment I did was to Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa, Japan. Yeah. We stayed in Air Force barracks. We went the Air Force exchange. It was amazing. But what a great strategy. We'll build everything else first, and then if we run out of money, it's like, sorry guys, we can't have this forward base. They're like, here's more cash. I can kind of support it.
It's a good quality of life. So, for your friends or family or whatever, I can see promoting that. And also, just to note, Marines are really intense and SEALs are really intense, and PJs that I know are super cool, calm guys, much less ego, much less drama, sit and bullshit, and it's not always a pissing kind of. So I think there's a lot to be said. All branches serve their purpose, and I respect that. But at the time, as a 17-year-old, the Marines look like the way to go.
Yeah, and 92, we were decade and a half from Vietnam. It had been some time, not a lot going on. The few, the proud, the Marines, goddamn, they make good commercials. Let's be honest.
Dude, our dress blues, come on.
I have never said anything other than this, that the fucking Marine Corps Class A's are the single sharpest uniform I've ever seen.
Class A's, the dress blues?
I think so.
Okay.
If they're not,
I'm going to agree with the
about.
dress blues.
Oh, yeah, the dress blues are unbelievable. Red stripe going down the side.
Blood stripe.
What?
Blood stripe.
I don't know if you've seen the Navy dress blues. They're no big deal. Just look like you're a fucking waiter.
Are these the whites that we're talking about? Dress whites?
Well, E7 or E6 and below, the dress whites and the dress blues are identical, other than the color with the stupid flap that comes from the wooden ship days, because people would have greased hair, so it was like hair flap. 13 buttons on the pants. Do you know how hard it is to get those open when you're shit-faced at a urinal?
No.
And so you end up like ripping them. And here's a good idea. don't wear all white because I don't know about you, white T-shirts for me, single use. Guaranteed I'm getting food on it somewhere.
If I wore white, I would probably end up sitting in chocolate and then walking around all day.
I went drinking in my dress whites one time, apparently, and this was I was doing like a post-mortem on my uniform because I didn't remember too much of the night, but I had a lot of Guinness. I obviously consumed some. Most of it appeared to be on my dress whites. And what I could determine due to smell was some Jaeger shots. Most of it on my dress whites. And it's like, I'm going to clean these with a garbage can and a match and just go ahead and buy some more as an E5. It's not my finest moment.
What did you get out as?
An 03.
An 03. Was that like an LDO program?
Is exactly the program that I took. Was the only one available because I don't have any college.
Okay.
And I was stalled out. As you know, well, at least on the Navy side, mandatory E1, E2, E3, heartbeat, blood pumping through your veins, guaranteed. E4, you're going to have to take a test for it. E5, coming up to E6. E6 to E7 is the big jump in the Navy, and you have to have these mandatory career and essentially leadership positions. I got hurt in the middle of my leadership position, so they counted it against me, so I essentially was no longer eligible for E7 unless I put myself on about a 5-year cycle because I had to wait for somebody to finish their tour doing it. Then I would have had to do the tour, take the test, wait for the results. And I'm like, fuck. So I started researching programs and as an E6 bumped over to O1E.
Good to go.
Yeah. I randomly found
it's a good program.
It is a great program.
Because who do you want to be led by?
Prior enlisted, I would say don't get me wrong. I've worked for some great academy officers, but I believe that you are a better leader if you know how the sausage
When
is
you
made.
say academy officers, are you talking about
The ring knockers? Sure. But because what made them great at leadership is not the fact that they had that ring, but they would listen. They would solicit for information. They weren't trying to be the smartest people in the room. They would empower other people to make decisions so they could get the bigger picture in mind. And they would act like when they didn't understand. By the time what'd you get out as?
E6.
So you knew how the Marine Corps worked.
I did.
I can't imagine coming in as an 01 after going through classes on leadership and all of these things. And hey, it's a rock, paper, rank organization. The most junior 01 is senior to the most senior E9. Now, you and I know that that's not necessarily how it plays itself out, but at a rank structure, imagine being that person who doesn't know shit about how the system works.
Or always getting the left-hand salutes from the sergeants.
Which,
morning, sir.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the right-hand people, so that's kind of a very subtle / not subtle, fuck you.
If they notice.
If they notice.
Yeah.
But, imagine being in that place versus being an 01 and I had 12 years of enlisted experience. Like, go ahead and try to pull a fast one on me. Like, oh, I was trying to, I'm like, fuck you, you weren't. Like, come on, let's go do this together.
But you also commanded more respect from those guys. It's not just that they couldn't, but they knew they couldn't, right? And so the guy's like, hey, you've been here, you've been in the dirt, you know how it goes. You've been on fire watch for however many days in a row and no libo, no leave. So you know what it's like. At least from my perspective, warrant officers used to tell me that they didn't get respect because the enlisted hated them and the officers hated them.
Oh, they felt like they existed in a weird medium.
And I can get that. But for me, guys that came in on the equivalent of what an LDO program is in the Marine Corps, I had the utmost respect for.
Do they only commission as warrants through the LDO in the Marine Corps?
No.
So it gives you both? Because the LDO package I submitted, I believe, was identical to the program is this. You can come out of it a warrant as well. I think it's just a different numerical thing that you put on top. And then they send everybody to the same school in Rhode Island. But yeah, it is weird. The warrants do kind of exist in a weird place because they're not technically a line officer.
Well, they're also the smallest group too.
That's true. Yeah, probably most people don't understand.
No, I didn't understand until I was probably a sergeant. Really. Yeah, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. But and some of the best guys that I work for, actually, a guy named Fred Wood was a warrant officer, Chief Warrant Officer 3, and he was phenomenal. Took me under his wing, showed me everything, explained to me, and would do it in, hey, this is how you do it on the enlisted side. But listen, the reason that you need to do it this way is because on the officer side, we're looking for this, and this is the ultimate objective. And it would be, the big picture view as opposed to, my little microscopic world as a Lance Corporal or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
why'd you decide to get out?
I shouldn't have got out. I shouldn't have got out. But I was working at the Motion Picture Liaison, and I was doing side jobs. I'm a Spanish speaker. I was doing side jobs in Mexico, executive protection work. And
So you got into that early.
Yeah, very early.
What was your first exposure, or how did you even dive into that?
Well, that's a deep dive. In LA, first of all, there are a lot of people with a lot of money. And they have
Tell me more.
They have a lot of businesses, and they go on a lot of vacations. And because of the proximity of Mexico, they would be doing business in Mexico City, or they'd be going on vacation somewhere on the coast, right? And as a Spanish speaker, and also, to be fair, they somehow thought that me being a former fighter and a jiu-jitsu guy meant something with respect to protection. So I leveraged that, much like saying I'm a SEAL or I'm a Israeli Mossad. Like the people they get stupid with that, right? Like it's
incredibly stupid.
Yeah, they get stupid.
Doors open.
Yeah,
and you're like, can you close that up before somebody unqualified walks through that?
Yeah. So I'm the first one to say, hand up, I got hired for all the wrong reasons. I got hired because you can fight. And I've seen you punch and kick and choke people and do this, and that's awesome. Come protect me. Well, I don't know that AO. If I don't know the AO, if I don't speak the language,
Area of operations speaker.
Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
So I got hired, and I took it. And these were weekend jobs because I was still in the Marine Corps. And
were you getting permission for these jobs? Sergeant Fox, you are in trouble.
No,
I'm sure
I'm
the
in deep
statute of
shit.
limitations gone.
Let's hope.
Yeah.
There were a few times where I got permission. And I got permission to go to Brazil a couple times, and that was good to go. But to do these jobs in Mexico, I didn't get permission. And sometimes they would limit these areas. These were no-go zones. They were restricted areas, and so you couldn't go there. So, if I'm going to get paid, let's say $500 a day to do a job legally, I'm not doing something illegal. I'm not trafficking in anything. I'm not taking people that don't belong there to or from anywhere. I'm protecting American citizens in a foreign country. So I'd go with them and do that. And so in that, I had side jobs, and that was where the EP work started. So mostly executive types, and then kind of shifted toward entertainment, producers, directors, stuff like that. And then at some point, we had this dude come in, and I was still in the Marine Corps. We had this dude come in who was a British guy, and he started training, and he'd pop in and he'd pop out, and then he wanted to do some stuff with me because I had at the time it was NHP, but I had an MMA background and did submission wrestling and competed a lot, and so he's training with me, and he loves this kind of stuff, and come to find out, he's a movie director. And eventually this guy's like, hey, I want you to come to work for me because you're training me, and I need you to help me when I'm traveling around. And by the way, my wife is going to go on tour, a music tour. I want you to come meet her. And at the time, still in uniform, go to Beverly Hills to meet his wife. And
British movie director? His wife was Madonna, wasn't it?
It was Madonna. So
it's Guy Ritchie, huh?
It was Guy Ritchie. So and I think Henry still does privates from, I think. But in any case.
Isn't he a black belt?
He is a black belt.
I heard him on Rogan talking about
for a celebrity. He's a tough dude. Most celebrities aren't so much that, but he put in his time. I mean, we used to train on the set every day.
Really?
Yeah. Matt's came with us across the world, literally.
So that relationship with him, is that what kind of gave you that
entertainment
off-ramp?
Yeah. So to go from executive protection to kind of entertainment-based protection. So that was that. And then just like with, again, Israeli or SEAL or whatever the brand is, they're like, oh, you did security for Madonna? Oh, which means nothing. Right? really. But it's calling card.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's a good one.
Leverage your calling card, I'm sure, in some places at some time. Not all the time, because you're laid back dude. But at some point when you need it and you don't have anything else, you leverage the calling card. And so they would do that. And in the world of entertainment, much like the world of the military, everything is word of mouth, right? I'm not looking at a resume. Like you tell me that dude's good to go, and I say, okay, well, I know Andy, I trust Andy, I trust his opinion, he's good to go. And it's the same in entertainment. So for music tours and for films, so our core competency, music tours, like going out on the road with artists, doing site survey or venue security, doing personal protection, and then doing films on location. So they're going to go shoot a film in Libya or wherever, and then we come in and we build the network, the infrastructure, and receive them, and then we break it down like a late party, and then we're off. But that became our core competency. And so we're 21-ish years in. I don't know if you count last year, because kind of in March last year we got shut down. So,
as did most of the world. the pause button, as I like to call it. I'm not sure if there's a finger hovering over it again to like let it go, or
I don't know. I keep hearing this term "great reset," and I'm like,
what the fuck does that even mean?
I hope I don't know what it means.
I hope it means we're going to burn both political parties to the ground and start over with term limits. That's what I would like the Great Reset to be.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's not what's going to happen.
So when you went down the EP path, was it just you, or did you?
I had to pick up guys along the way. So
I was going to say you built it. I mean, obviously you built it into a business. How did it grow?
So me alone is one, and that's good for one-on-one protection or maybe a family in a low-risk environment. But then you have to build a network of local nationals, right? Because I'm going to this place where I have no authority at all. I have no weapon at all. Now I have to go in and find guys that have guns and cars and training and skills. And usually in those types of country, I specialize kind of in the Latin market for the most part. But in those types of country, in Africa, also in Southeast Asia and in the Middle East, you have to train them to your standards or to what is acceptable for you in that environment, that period of time. So what ended up happening is I would have the same guys, and they didn't start out great, but they were trustworthy. So you send something down the pipe to see if they're going to take it, right, to test them, to vet them, and then they don't take it and it doesn't leak out. And you, okay, this guy's good to go. You do it a couple times, and you build a rapport. You learn about their family and them. You learn about them as a human, and you work with them, and you pay them well, way above what the standard is. You bring them things that maybe they can't access. Maybe it's a pair of sunglasses. This guy loves Oakley sunglasses. I bring this guy Oakley sunglasses. And you develop rapport. Now I show them how to handle the weapon. Like, how do you hand the weapon to somebody? How do you charge the weapon? These guys legally had guns and didn't know how to use them. They had shot 10 rounds, 20 rounds, 30 rounds.
That. Just joking, Tennessee. It's obviously Kentucky.
I didn't say that, guys. I live in that area.
I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I'm saying I know some people
Those guys
like that.
hunt, man. Those guys know how to hunt. They've been hunting their whole life. They've been fishing their whole lives. Come on. So the Mexicans didn't at the time that I worked with, and so we built teams, trustworthy guys, and the guys would come and go.
You're just describing building a partner force. I mean, this is almost exactly what we did in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, so you're doing it on a small scale. So I go in and I build a relationship and I try to vet people, and inevitably you're going to have shit bags that get in, and you have to filter them out and get rid of them. And then you train them to whatever standard you can train them based on the time that you have and the systems that you have in place and what your client's willing to pay for something. Okay. So you train them up over time, they get better, just like jiu-jitsu. I'm teaching you this now, I'm teaching you this, and eventually you become good at the thing. And you become serious and you become respected, and you see that you're respected and you take your job seriously, which is a problem in Latin markets. So the only other option for us, if we didn't do that, is to find a parallel structure that we could utilize, an existing structure, and then piggyback off of that somehow, which is not the best option if you can build your own network. So build the network, we do that. And now after 20 years, we're lucky. I did this count for somebody the other day, but I think I'm at 147 countries. And so
that's a lot of network like that?
Yeah, that's a lot of operational experience. But not everybody's great. And the standards all over the map, right? Just like a blue belt, the guy could be horrible, or the guy could be almost a black belt as a blue belt. That variance. And the same with black belts. There's a massive level difference in black belts. So the same thing with security, what they know, how they understand it. And really those guys are the individuals that are going to establish what the baseline of normalcy is and then identify what the anomaly is so that we can change our course of action or behavior, what we're going to do. I don't see that in that environment. Maybe now I do in, say, Mexico or Colombia or places like that, but we use them as a litmus test for certain things, and they start getting funny. We know, even if they don't say anything, just, oh, that's a problem. Yeah. All right, I know all his tells, and this is an issue. Now we're leaving. So we built that network. We utilize that network for executives, for celebrities, for some dignitaries as well. And in countries like that, I'm sure people aren't so trustworthy for the most part, and people at high levels want to pass information or knowledge or details or documents or whatever it is. They use a third party. They don't use that host nation's people because chances are it's going to go outside of that, and
it's going to control of it.
Correct. And so we get a lot of, we do work like that as well, where we're the intermediary for high level guys between point A and point B because they just don't trust their own people. So
people will hear this and they'll say, "Oh my God, that sounds like some Jason Bourne shit."
Nope.
One of my
normal dude shit.
One of my least favorite type activities was PSD, personal security detail stuff, protection detail. And I only did it overseas, but I hated, and again, probably completely different environment. I wasn't working with Madonna and Mr. Ritchie. I was just standing there.
That's an insult, guys.
I'm standing there with all of my shit on, with no ability to be proactive. It was completely reactive.
So one thing I saw was a photo that was very blurry of you, and it looked like you
all
could have
photos
been.
of me are blurry. It's just the way I was. I mean, I just can't be documented.
Okay, Jason Bourne. I think I could be wrong, but it looked like you might have been on the car's ID too.
Yes. I
Okay.
was.
So that's high level shit, right? Your ability to act there, you don't have to worry so much about civil lawsuits, right? But the threat is much higher. But if I take a high profile person and I put them in a high risk environment, that's bad. It's very bad. And I have to worry about the other component, right? So just like in the United States, we have criminal law and we have civil law. And while I might be within the parameters of criminal law and what I'm doing is legal, it doesn't mean that someone can't sue me, right?
Yep.
And so I always have to worry about that with celebrities because celebrities have targets on their back because they're high net worth people and they're high visibility people. So while I agree with you that PSD is not super fun and sexy, there's also a lot of jobs, and I don't know what your following is, but there are some jobs in PSD I think are great, which is like advanced site survey. Like I'm going ahead of the party, I'm getting all the details, but I'm not stuck on the principal. So, for us, like if I'm on the principal, I'm the agent in charge, or if I'm the tactical commander, I'm sitting back behind them and I've got my flanks, what we call window lickers and trunk monkeys and all these guys. And that's all great and sexy, and you're doing these foot movements and these vehicle movements, and that's fine. But like you said, you're in a hostile environment and you're standing out like a sore thumb.
Waiting for somebody to do something.
Waiting for yes. Reaction versus action. But
the key in that environment, though, that I found was you already touched on it, get ahead of the problem. Address it before it becomes crazy. And to me, it's almost always about just kind of checking the pulse of what's going on. Unless you've actually felt it, you can just feel the difference in the air or the quietness. You're like, we need to get the fuck out of here right now.
Yes.
And you're getting out of there before that situation presents itself.
And in fact, that's a program that we utilize, which is the Marine Corps Combat Hunter program, right? The Combat Hunter program basically takes the most simple variables and tells you, hey, establish what the baseline is, figure out whether there's anomaly above the baseline, which means something's added to the environment that shouldn't be there. It wasn't there in the past, now it's there, or something's removed from it, anomaly below the baseline. It was there before, it's not there now. That's a problem. And then establish whether it's a critical threat or if it's benign. It just happens to be. It happened, right?
Yeah.
Most anomalies are benign, right? They're not significant, but you can't treat them that way. So then they break it down and say, okay, either you're going to cancel your operation, you're going to change your plans, or you're going to continue exactly as planned. Those were your three options, right? And it's very simple, but they would say, okay, yeah, you were here, your advanced site survey crew came here, and there was activity here and lots of people and doors and windows open, and now you're coming back at the same time of day on the same day of the week. And that's not the case.
And why are all the women and children leaving? I wonder.
Indicator.
Yeah, the pre-violence indicator. I mean, I look back at almost, especially in the daylight stuff, the number of pre-violence, pre-ambush indicators. You may not catch them all in the moment, but when you're sitting back at the end of the day, you're like, maybe we should pay attention to that.
No, after the fact, I'm with you 100% on that. After the fact, you can see all of these things, right? You see their body positioning, you see their eye movement, you see kind of, wait, that doesn't fit. Like normally people would be frontally aligned when they're talking. Why are they blading off to the side? Why do they keep looking back at this guy? And all those things are there. It's just picking them up. And as you know, we talked about this today. When you're rolling, I was saying you have to operate on multiple planes at the same time. So that OODA loop's going and you're attacking or whatever, but now I'm going left and I'm kind of going forward and I'm pushing hands through. So when I'm busy and I got all my kit on and I'm tired and I'm thinking about going home or whatever else it is, and then those little tiny indicators are occurring, it's very hard to pick up.
Yeah.
And that's why you need special type people.
Yeah, and then that experience too, there was so much pattern recognition in what I used to do. Once you recognize it, then you can pick it up. Yeah, it takes a long time though.
It does, but it's really cool because the science that backs that, and you can look at it happening in real time. So you can go out and do, let's say you were doing some type of human intelligence, human training, and you just go out and you're just observing, just as an observer, watching how people naturally act in an environment. I think it's fascinating. Sit in the airport and watch people.
Oh, I love
act
people watching.
And like I'm trying to figure out, what does he do for a living? Why is he wearing those clothes? And let's say the two of us.
Yep.
there are certain indicators, like neither one of us have cauliflower ear, but there's certain indicators like your posture or your tattoos or
Obviously,
if you have a knife and a flashlight in your pocket, it's like, okay, you're going to be coming from military or law enforcement, you're an outdoors guy. Like,
I carry a full-size flashlight in my pocket.
Yeah, you do.
Just to keep people wondering, like, is that a flashlight or is he happy?
You see that holster they make that has that?
Oh,
It's got that long tube that comes down.
Yes, I forget the name of it. It's basically an appendix carry that has a full shaft, if you know what I'm talking about, to intentionally print.
Yes.
And I've actually, so many people have sent me that. I'm like, what's the appropriate hashtag to post this with? Because I will fucking post anything. I really don't care. But
now we're talking about indicators, right? And we're talking about this long tube. Now check this out.
Yep. Nobody will see it. It's been there for over a month. Nobody's said anything.
Just That's classic, man. In fact, that might be the best thing of this trip.
It was sent to me as a gift, and I am not going to turn down a gift. I'm going to put it right on the podcast table. I wish the man was alive. I would definitely reach out to him and try to get him on the podcast to talk about the tree trunk he used to walk around life with.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, so I won't comment.
Yeah.
But that guy infiltrated every text for months. I mean, that guy's the face of the pandemic.
He is the face of the pandemic. Everybody knows exactly what we're talking about. I have had so many. Well, here's the thing. Actually, if your friends don't send you that text, I'm sorry, because you don't have awesome friends like I do.
Has anybody sent you the challenge coin? You know he's on a challenge coin, like a proper challenge coin.
Oh, dude, no, I've seen that. I've seen masks, pandemic masks. I've seen latte foam in his shape. He was the stinging end of the killer hornets. Santa Claus, all of it. All of it. And every time I get one, I fall for that fucking text where it's like breaking news. I'm like, let me click on that. And I'm like, I'm sending this to like 15 people right now because I have to pass on this awesomeness.
Dude, I have a stalker named Donald Parker who's a black belt in Austin who I keep, Donald, please stop sending me those pictures.
Speaking of black belts, when did you get your black belt?
Man, I'm horrible with dates.
How many years did it take you to get your black belt? Because that's
forever. It took forever. So I think it was 11 or 12 years to black belt, about 12 years to black belt. Now, in fairness, in the beginning, I competed nonstop in everything and was winning. And then I got into security and I was gone. So it was 3 months training, no training for 3 months. 3 months training, no training. So in fairness, the total time.
That's a rough path because you're going to get up and down and up and down.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then comes injuries, right? Like now we're rolling around. I've got a torn MCL, a torn meniscus, and I think also now a special one on my ACL. But you navigate it, right? And so it took 12 years. Maybe it would have taken 8 years, but it took about 12 years. And that would have been the summer of 2007, I think. Something like that.
I hear a lot of people talking about black belts and time to get there as if it's the end of the journey. And now that I've been around a lot of black belts, they just sit back and they laugh because, you know, Travis has said it many times. The deviation in black belts is almost more than the deviation from white to black. Like it's insane.
Blue belts and black belts have this massive disparity.
Blue belts do.
Yeah, really. Blue belts do. They do. You have blue belts who can't fight their way out of paper bag, and then you got blue belts
but they
who
won't
are like,
stop coming to class.
Who are crazy good, and massive disparity in blue belt, and then there's this massive disparity in black belt as well, and everybody thinks, oh no, it's all the same. It's not the same, and 25 years in, I'm still learning. I'm still looking at, and I'm not learning in the way of like trying to learn a bunch of new moves. I'm trying to refine what I know. How do I make it easier? How do I make it simple? How do I make it apply to more environments? Can I do this with a gi? Can I do it without a gi? Can I do it with kit on? Right.
Yeah.
So if my kit comes out, let's say I have a kit on with soft armor and then some type of ceramic, and then I have magazine pouch, and then I have pistol pouches on that. Man, I'm coming out 8 inches off my chest.
I was going to say that's 6 to 8 off your chest.
Yeah,
right there.
so guess what? It changes it. It gives the guys handles, and now I can't move as freely. I can't bend the same way. So I'm trying to figure out how do I create techniques or adjust techniques or refine techniques so that it works for me in all environments. And Travis talked about that today, and you probably saw me shaking my head like, I agree with them 100%. You got to be able to do it with a gi on, without a gi on, with somebody punching you. And you and I talked about a student of mine who's a retired Navy commander, and we have to test it. We have to test your gear, and he's one of those guys. High speed gear, but finger goes in the trigger. High speed gear, but the thing breaks. High speed gear, but you don't know how to deal with it, or you target fixate on. Okay, I'm protecting this, and now I'm getting punched in the face, and then that guy pulls a knife out and is stabbing me. So
there's nothing like a $2,500 race pistol with a $20 holster that comes apart that doesn't have proper coverage.
Does the holster look cool?
Let's not discount that factor. I mean, let's be honest. Fucking Instagram ads.
Snakeskin or like carbon fiber, or
why does it have to be one or the other? You could do one on the inside, one on the out. I might have been gotten by some goddamn Instagram sexy looking. I'm like, I do need a zebra skin holster for that 1911 I don't own. Fuck. I guess I need a 1911 too. And I'm just, next thing you know, I'm like, throw my phone away.
It's an addiction, man. It's an addiction.
No, it's not the gear. It's the person that actually manipulates the gear at the end of the day that makes the difference. You can have all the high-speed gear you want, the best, like I said, M4 or pistol, and if you don't know how to use it, you're going to be found dead with, actually somebody's probably going to take it because they'll recognize that it's nice, or you'll be killed with your own stuff, which I think is probably the worst-case scenario.
Yeah, that's serious shit, and it's not good, and it happens a lot.
It does. You worked with law enforcement for a while. Were you a police officer?
As well.
How did you get into that path in all of this?
Okay, so the short version is I took a job. Basically, for this contract, I was told, we would really like you to be a Leo. I said, okay, but I'm not a Leo.
Probably for HR 218?
So HR 218 for you guys is House Resolution Act 218, which is the Liaison Law Enforcement Officer Safety Act, which allows law enforcement officers to carry firearms across the nation.
It trumps all concealed carry laws in states, essentially.
Yeah, but there's also a caveat to that, and we can talk about that offline because there are a lot of circumstances where HR 218 doesn't work anymore when you're working.
But I don't want to talk about those. Ignorance is bliss. And here's the thing. I'm not an LEO, so it actually doesn't matter. Yeah. But I'm glad that you said that because I didn't realize that. So if you're operating under HR 218,
guys, just check it out. Yeah, know the law. So they wanted that, and it was very similar, and it wasn't this, but do you know what CivPol is? No. So you know what the WIPS program is? The State Department Worldwide Protective Service. So contractors, so any BDUB, TC, any of the contracting agencies, they have to go through the mandated State Department course, which I think they're on WIPS 3 right now, but it doesn't matter. So they have to go through this course. There's an equal one for police. So there are civilian police called CivPol. They go overseas to work with partner nations and stand up a police force. So like Haiti, Bosnia, like there's a bunch of active ones. Now, this is all open source information. This is not anything.
I've never heard of
that.
CivPol.
Okay. CivPol. Yeah, you can look it up. So it was similar to that in structure. So they wanted a Leo and they wanted this. And the guy said, we know you have these skills, but you're not a Leo and you need that. Like, here's my black belt certificate, which I don't even know if I have, but they wanted that. So I had to go through a state police academy for 6 months. And then
how was that?
I wasn't in with the best class.
What state did you go through?
So, no, the state's good. The state's good, and the guys are good. To be fair, and they do training, and they're great guys, and I respect them. But I went through with a class of guys that wasn't the best. So we'll just leave it at that. So I went through that, which also, on a side note, the DT instructor there was
defensive tactics.
I'm going to get you on the next time you throw one of these on. So
I never use acronyms, so you'll be waiting forever.
Yeah, HR 218, guys, that was an acronym. So this DT program, the defensive tactics program, the fighting, the combatives, for most law enforcement agencies, it's PPCT or pressure point control tactics, which is a shit. And I'm saying this publicly, it's a shit program. So this guy, his name is Kirk Davis. He actually implemented Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, and wrestling for their police defensive tactics, which is a great program. He's no longer there because he moved up in rank, and I think they're continuing to carry on that program, but really strong program. So I at least was lucky enough to have a few guys around, which was a challenge because they didn't want to train with a recruit. So it took me months to get them to actually agree to train me because I didn't tell them I was a black belt.
Yeah. And you went into that already.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So Kirk I think was a purple belt, and Brandon, I think, was a blue belt. But their main DT instructors were jiu-jitsu guys. And so after a while, I finally convinced them to let me train after hours with them. And then it was great, because then at night I could train jiu-jitsu, because otherwise I wasn't training, because police recruits don't want to fucking train.
Where did what was it, PPCT, where did that come from, and how did it get so deeply entrenched?
All right, so I'll because
I
know the long story on this, and it is long, but I'll tell you this. PPCT came from a guy named Bruce Siddle, who's in Illinois. And to be fair to Bruce, when the program started, they had a lot of good techniques, right, that worked. Like they had an arm triangle in the techniques that they called a lateral vascular neck restraint. And most of that is gone now, because every time that they applied the techniques that worked, they'd get sued. So they took all the shit that worked out. Just kind of like, if you think about
like what happened
Taekwondo,
in New York?
or if you look at these programs, there are things that work, and then those things cause problems. Just like a badass cop, they want basically an administrator to be on the street because he doesn't cause problems for him. A badass will go out there and engage people and get in trouble, and it costs money. So same thing happened with PPCT. So PPCT, Pressure Point Control Tactics, was founded by Bruce Siddle. It was a decent program in the beginning. It was the mandated thing. It got sold to all the departments. And then eventually all of the techniques, which was only a handful, but all the techniques that worked went away. And so now you're stuck with like a common peroneal strike and an infraorbital nerve, and like the C-clamp on the hypoglossal nerve, and underneath. It's like,
that sounds like some Spock shit.
Yeah, none of that shit works. None of that shit works.
I mean, I don't know exactly what those things are, but I always think of, when it comes to, if you have to put your hands on somebody, you might want to assume that they're hopped up on meth and maybe not wearing clothes. So is that stuff still going to work in that situation?
Listen, I agree with you. So when I teach law enforcement, we don't do arm bars, right? We don't do that kind of thing, because I've arm bar guys in the street. And yes, they don't fight with that arm, and they run away and they scream, but it doesn't stop the fight if they have a gun or knife or anything else. So we work on things that work, right? Things, positional control, things like, well, we would call them restraints, right? So the vernacular is a little bit different for legal purposes, but
which is insane in and of itself.
Yes,
that you have to navigate the legal structure to actually equip officers with shit that works.
Well, what's really nuts is that when you look at use of force laws, right, they're really governed by two basic cases: Graham versus Conor, right, which says that you must use objectively reasonable force based on the totality of the circumstances. It doesn't tell you what level, right? If you have a female officer that's 120 pounds and she's fighting an MMA fighter, and he punches her or grabs her, she's justified in pulling out her gun and shooting him.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah.
So they use this thing from FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. There was an administrative model like that had this force continuum on it, and it's like, if they do this, you can do this +1. If they do that, you can do this +1. And it was always this escalation, de-escalation. And the truth is, fights don't happen like that. It goes from 0 to 100, and it's not just this tit for tat thing. And that's how officers got in trouble. Then they went to kind of like a pinwheel where you could go out from where you're at and select the appropriate level of force. But you're talking about guys that get maybe 40 hours at the academy, and then they might get 4 hours a year of training. And now under immense stress, they're behind the power curve. And I think we talked about this too. The bad guy's picking the time, the place, and the method of attack.
Yeah.
And what the cop gets is the response. How do they react to it? So action, generally speaking, beats reaction. That's a shitty equation for them to start with. They're complying as an officer with the law, and the shitbag or the criminal has no rules. They may have better training. Certainly, if you go to prison, you think you're going to lift weights, you think you're going to meet tough people, you think you're going to be in fights. That cop's not. He's doing his job, and he's going home, and that's another failure. Firearms training. If the agency doesn't mandate it, they don't do it. If you don't give me the ammo, I'm not going out and buying the ammo. I don't agree with it, just to be clear. I don't agree with that mentality, but that's what the common mentality is. So,
which is insane to me.
It is insane. I mean, that's your lifeline. But think about this. A cop is all of these things, right? He's dealing with traffic, he's dealing with fights, he's dealing with these disturbances that are civil and he shouldn't even be dealing with. And you're giving him more and more training, like CIT training for dealing with people that are mentally ill and imbalanced. Okay, now he's got to deal with that. And now he had a tool belt in the old days, and it had a couple magazines and a pistol. And now it's got the pistol, the magazines. He's got a taser. He's got OC spray. He's got a baton. He's got a camera. They're weighing him down with all this crap. And so the more that he's got to deal with, you got to think through it. There's no time for that.
And it puts you on the wrong side of the OODA loop.
Yes, sir. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So in training costs money, right? And so we say, well, 99% of the time we don't have problems. So we're just going to go with this administrator guy, and we're going to give him the basic level of training, which whatever the standard is for post, right? The peace officer standards in testing or training for whatever state, right? They have the standard. You must do this. It costs money. Why do I want to spend money on that thing if I'm only seeing 1% of incidents involve this?
You better train for worst case scenario.
I agree. And that's why it's on the individual officer. And there's a couple of programs, and forgive me, I can't remember his name. There was a team guy that started a program like Adopt a Cop BJJ.
Mitch Aguilar.
Okay. I don't know him, but I saw that the other day and I was like, good on him, man. That's great. Because that's what they need. They need guys saying, hey, if you're going to protect our community, let me give you this skill set so that you can actually do it. And then you can go home at the end of your shift.
So we started, Travis and I talked about it. I sell a T-shirt through the podcast, and I take every penny, and what I do is I scholarship police. And I mean,
sell me one. I'll buy one today.
Yeah, well, and it ends up being like, I think $50 a month for the police, because the SPG is ridiculously, it's for all SPG gyms. They're cutting the membership in half, then they're giving them the LEO discount, then there's the sponsorship, with the goal of just driving that excuse out the door. Because I get it, money, depending on what kind of family situation you come from. But I also, at the same time that I get it, I don't, because you need to invest in actually going home to that family.
I agree with that.
And I don't know of an occupation that actually touches people in a professional capacity. I guess doctors probably would. Man, I guess doctors, maybe ER doctors encounter combative people. But as far as combative people that you actually touch on a day-to-day basis, I don't know of any occupation where it could be more important to understand all of that stuff that we're talking about.
Absolutely. 100%. No questions about it.
And what's still crazy though? I don't know. I haven't cracked the code on actually getting them to come into the gym. I suspect, and I hope that I'm wrong on this, but I suspect that one of the things getting in the way is their ego.
That is a major factor. And you see, and thankfully the DT program I mentioned didn't have this, but most defensive tactics programs for law enforcement agencies are run by a guy who wants to be a badass, so he picks on guys. And like we talked about today, if I go in and beat everybody up, what did I teach you? I didn't teach you anything.
I didn't want you to teach them anything today, Tosh. I wanted you to fuck them up.
You got to tell me that in advance, man.
I thought I was coming in a white belt with 3 stripes and then just murder people, and they'll be like, fuck, that white belt's got a future if he just keeps training,
I took the wrong approach, man. I owe you one next time.
No, I would never do. Honestly, I think it's amazing to have people of your caliber to be able to come in, and I can, there's different mentalities in the gym, and some people are like, oh, I don't know, and other people are like, I have to roll with that person.
Yeah, you see it. I had tons of guys come, hey, and
because they appreciate.
I had 12 people.
Yeah.
10 guys and 2 girls, and great.
Yeah.
Great. Get some.
And then there's some people are like, I'm done for the day. Because they don't, and I get it, depending on their journey, or they're like, I don't know this person, I might get smashed.
Yeah. So back to your point, law enforcement has that. They have that ego, and we have it in jiu-jitsu too, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to get smashed. So they have that ego, and they either gravitate to that position so they can be the guy beating someone, or they refuse to go to it unless it's mandated. So it can be in-service training or some other variant of law enforcement required training. But at the end of the day, I agree with you. It's on them. The onus is ultimately on them because it's their life, it's their family. But I think we got to give them a little bit more incentive through the agency, right? When you look at New York, when they start saying you can't do jiu-jitsu, you can't use wrestling techniques, you can't, you're tying their hands. Like what? Another one, Chicago's going through this right now, qualified immunity. Do you know what that is?
No.
So essentially qualified immunity protects the police officer from civil litigation, right? So you can't sue him. So he does something in line of duty, he's justified in doing it, you can't come back and sue him civilly. So they're talking about removing that from cops. So now they can sue, not the department.
They're never going to get out of their car.
That's what's happening.
And right? You know what? I don't blame them.
No, of course
there's a difference between a legal act and a moral act, obviously.
Yes.
Overseas hostile act, hostile intent, if either are met or both, you can take a lethal act. But that doesn't always mean that that's the moral act that you should take. But if you put these people in this situation where they are 100% inside of the letter of the law and the definition of their job, and then their life is going to be destroyed financially, fuck you. They're never going to get out of the car, and I wouldn't blame them for not getting out of the car.
That's already a problem, right? Because you look at poor communities, and they're trying to draw police officers in and recruit from poor communities. Well, they don't want to do it because cops aren't respected. Then they have to pass a drug test. Then they have to pass a criminal test. Then they have to pass 6 months of training. Then they have to be a probie. And then now on top of it, oh, sorry, if you get hung up on this thing, then we really can't help you.
You get one of these where people are just like, shh, and the next thing you know, you were acting inside of the authorities of your job, and
to
you're
be clear,
bankrupt.
To be clear, this captures one angle.
Correct.
Right, and it's a moment in time. So if let's say you're a cop, I come up, I punch you in the face, I step back, and then you start to come at me. My friend starts recording. Bam. Okay.
Yeah. Depends on where that video splices in.
Yeah.
Paints two very, very different pictures.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
also people that have not been under stress. And this is another great thing about jiu-jitsu because it's a struggle, right? There's constant resistance and struggle.
Yep.
And you're used to dealing with that. And it makes your mind strong because you're used to dealing with these challenges. And like you said, problem solving, right? So same thing here. If people get used to force encounters like the mayor or councilman and things like that, their understanding and their allowance for certain like general orders for police departments is going to be great. The problem is nobody wants to do that. They don't want to get hit with simunition. They don't want to get hit with a shock knife. They don't want to be tased or OC'd. The ones that do it always come back. The
value of those tools is unbelievable. Simunitions, be like, yeah, it's not going to hurt that bad. And I have watched some inner bitch come out of people on the receiving end of simunitions. You know, big, tough, swinging dick team guy, and they start getting lit up generally in the calves because that's a spicy place to get lit up with simunitions. And let me tell you right now, I've been shot with real rounds and simunition. The real hurts more, but it elicits a much more true reaction of what you can expect in that moment than going in there with blanks.
I agree.
Charging,
The first thing is the problem in your head, right? Because you know you can get hit with this thing. That's the first part. Not even getting hit, because it's just the thought of it. Oh shit! So your behavior changes, and then for me, for example, you're talking about calves, and that's probably team guys sucking people in. But for me, where I've been hit the most is the hands, and if you don't have gloves on, it fucking
hurts
sucks
terribly.
Yes.
That doesn't surprise me because most people are looking at your hands to identify, and then naturally that instinctive fire is going to be right at the hands.
Yeah.
We would usually try to be gentlemanly, be like, waist down. However, I'm not going to wear a cup into the kill house, so knees down. But calf shots, they'll drop you like a sniper shot in the chest.
Doesn't feel good.
No. And of course, if you put the sim rounds in the freezer the night before.
That's wrong. That's the same with paintballs.
Wrong.
You're shooting. Yeah.
There's no right or wrong, black and white. It's gray. Somebody else could do that too. They can put their rounds in the freezer.
It's gray if you're shooting the rounds. It's black and white if you're receiving.
Extremely black and white. There's fist fights that have started over that. What was the second case law for the use of force?
So Graham versus Conor is the primary, and then Tennessee versus Garner is the second one. In Tennessee versus Garner, basically what they say is that you can shoot a fleeing felon that poses a threat to the general public or the officers. So, the case that happened down in Atlanta recently, that is a great example, like
at the
by the book, the drive-through.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's by the book. And it's that's got a lot of little caveats and nuances to it.
It truly does. Yeah.
But that would have been a clean shoot almost anywhere in the country based on the totality of the circumstances, right? And the trier of fact can only think about what another reasonably trained and experienced officer would do. They don't have hindsight, 20/20 hindsight, like, oh, well, I knew all these factors, but he didn't know them, so I judge him based on that. It's only what the trier of fact can only look at what another reasonably and trained officer would do in those circumstances.
I actually lost track of the end state of what was going on with that. I believe the officers were placed on administrative leave, right? Have you heard that? Has it come to a completion?
There was so much going on at that time, and I because I'm from St. Louis and because I dealt with agencies around Ferguson, I'm familiar with a lot of use of force cases, and that one in particular. But I don't know the guys that were involved in it. But I know all of the facts. And at the end of the day, even I want to say it was a month prior, where some of the city council members were saying that using a taser was lethal force, which it's not, but they were saying that. And then when this guy used a taser on a police officer, all of a sudden it wasn't lethal force anymore, which it's not congruent. And as we know, you have to apply law in a congruent manner.
Yeah.
Or should, theoretically. So I don't know the status of those guys, man, but I hope they're doing all right. There are certainly bad police shoots, but I'm seeing a lot of justified ones that then are getting tried in the court of public opinion and on social media, and they don't have the facts.
Oh, and it's almost like there's no coming back from that either.
There's not.
Yeah.
That's it. We tried you. You're done. You're guilty. And now that guy's got to operate in public. So I'm not clearing every police officer every time, but when you look at the totality of the circumstances, when you get the context, when you get the information, when you get the knowledge, and you understand the law, most of the time they're good. Most of the time, not all of the time. Most of the time.
And what frustrates me even more is the people who are calling the loudest to burn them at the stake. And I don't think they would ever want to be in that person's shoes, but if they were ever in that person's shoes and had to make that decision, what they would want is the most thorough investigation humanly possible before judgment was rendered. But they're not giving other people that space.
The case in Minneapolis, same thing. It's like, bam, you're done. Like, wait a second, you haven't investigated all this shit. I'm not saying the guy's innocent or guilty, but you first do the investigation, and then you make decisions. It's not you make a decision and then you collect facts.
Yeah, you
collect all the facts, do the investigation. So again, you have the totality of it, and you have all the context surrounding it, and now you make a decision, an informed decision, which is fair.
Due process needs to apply to everybody.
Agreed.
I mean, the court of public opinion.
It's the strongest one right now, unfortunately,
and the swiftest. I don't know if I've ever seen condemnation off of partial information faster. And I don't know how that ship is righted either, because it seems to be accelerating, not decelerating. Everybody has a device. Everybody has the ability to essentially be a reporter, whether they want to tell a biased story.
Yeah, the thing is, you look at the deaths, and in America, when you talk about use of force, again, we're getting back into like 0.00068%, use of force with a firearm that actually shoots a subject. Like, it's minuscule. It's the safest place in the world to come relative to that, in places that carry guns. It's silly. We're talking about this minuscule thing, ignoring the big thing in front of us, and it's like playing a slot machine. And you have one quarter. This slot machine on your left wins 9 out of 10 times. The slot machine on your right loses 9 out of 10 times. You have one quarter. What are you going to play?
The winner.
Simple.
Yeah.
Simple math.
What are your thoughts on law enforcement and BJJ? I mean, we were talking about it a little bit in the coffee shop, and I agree with your. I appreciated your mentality of the situational awareness, and that it's not. Maybe it's not the best thing for every situation.
So first, so I don't get blasted, I teach a variation of BJJ to law enforcement first. But I don't teach it as a go-to because I don't think it's a smart thing to intentionally take the fight to the ground unless there's no other option, or you can't gain control, or it's a matter of cuffing and that's the way that you can control them. Because one, I want to have elevation. The reason I want to have elevation is so I can see what's going on around me. When I'm standing up, I can see over the hood of a car. I can see over the trunk. I can see under the wheels. I can see when guys are running at me, his friends with guns or knives, so they're just going to kick me, whatever it may be. So elevation is a big deal. And when we do jiu-jitsu, either you're on top facing down or you're down facing up. You can't see anything. You don't have that elevation.
Well, you can look lovingly into another man's eyes.
I tried to do that to yours, but you averted your eyes.
I can't make eye contact with a man trying to kill me.
You wanted to, you know it. So
I resisted.
So elevation is one key thing. Another thing is that when you're down on the ground, you don't have mobility in jiu-jitsu. So like your ability to disengage is limited. So you need mobility in a fight, especially when you're talking about with weapons, right? So if there's no weapons, it's one thing. But if there's weapons and if there are other people that could be coming to that person's rescue, it's a problem. So I need elevation. I need mobility. Another factor is proximity to weapons, right? So one of the things is if we're in close proximity, first of all, we know, and this is again a combat hunter thing, proximity negates skill. We know this. I don't have to learn how to use a gun. Bam! I pull the trigger. I just point at you and I pull. That's it. Same thing with swinging. Like I have a puncher's chance. So it's not same with knife, cutting, thrusting, stabbing, whatever. I don't have to be good. You reach your hand up. Bam! That's it.
And you got a problem on your hands.
Well, look,
literally.
I slash your hand and you retract your hand, and now you just opened up your center, and I thrust. So. You don't need it. So proximity to weapons is a big thing. So when you're doing jiu-jitsu, you have immediate access to their waist and they have it to yours. And also think about this. Let's say you're the cop and let's say I put you in my guard. What did I just cover up?
All of your Batman belt.
You can't pull out any of your gear. Nothing, right? Maybe you can get to a backup, maybe.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I just took away most of your options. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not a great spot to go to. The bad guy also has access. He can be wrestling with you. And I mentioned this because I was training a guy last week on this. While I'm fighting to retain my gun, so I'm dealing with weapon retention, if I'm dealing with that, first of all, I don't believe in two hands on, but I'm dealing with this guy fraying on him or controlling him or head control, and I've got my weapon controlled, and if I can't, because I can't take it out. So now I've got to worry about what you do with your hands, because if you reach in and grab a knife and start stabbing me, or you grab your gun, I'm done.
Yeah.
So I have to figure out a way to protect myself, create a frame, get back up to a fighting position if I can, or take a gut shot or whatever it's going to be. But I don't advocate it, right? Proximity is bad. Then the last thing, and we discussed this too, is surface space. So if you and I are rolling around, we're rolling around on a mat, right? Some type of cushion, something soft. We're not rolling around in dirt, on mud, on rocks, on ice out here. It changes, right? Your stability changes.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like if I try to take you down and I drive my knee, which is already jacked up, into cement, that's not good. It doesn't stop me from fighting. I'm still going to be fighting, but
It may stop you from fighting for the rest of your life later.
absolutely. But even in that fight, if we
Yeah.
get back up to our feet and I'm hobbling because I have some type of structural damage to my knee, how is that going to help me? So the idea that you immediately go to jiu-jitsu, even though I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt, even though I believe in jiu-jitsu, even though I teach jiu-jitsu to law enforcement officers, I don't think that is the first go-to if you can prevent it. Now, having said that, people tackle cops all the time. Cops will push suspects into cars and have to take them down because this guy's pushing off the thing and resisting and using elbows and knees and kicking backward and doing all kinds of stuff, headbutts backwards. So at some point, that cop needs to put him on the ground to even the odds, to flatten him out, to use the ground in his favor, and then put him in some type of cuffing position. So there are values to it, but you have to be aware of all of the chinks in the armor, the weaknesses, the vulnerabilities that exist with what we do.
I can imagine a situation where, as a police officer, whatever, the highest rated jiu-jitsu black belt in the history of black belts, and he is rolling with the dude on the ground and gets soccer kicked in the face. And I don't care how many stripes are on your black belt. If you didn't see it coming and you lost that situational awareness, because you know as well as I do, the more that your head is down and in, it just incrementally chips away at you. And jiu-jitsu is awesome, but I don't know if it works against 5 or 6 people.
Yeah. I mean, so let's talk about that. So the fallacy of fighting all these opponents, right? If you are 100% of yourself and now you're fighting a mirror image, that's 100%. So it's 100% against 100%. Now, what happens when you add 200%, 300%, 400%, 500%? All things being equal, you're going to lose.
Every time.
Unless your awareness is high, unless you're getting their attention somewhere else, unless you're doing, serious damage on the first blow or second blow and you're moving, right? But again, doing that means you got to be up because you can't do multiples down.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can really do more than 1 or 2 people unless they're low level and you are at a super high level. Maybe you can deal with 1 or 2 people because you're thinking on different planes at the same time. But for the most part,
the only way you're going to win in that situation is if you start introducing tools, which, again, in an environment where you're going to be potentially prosecuted on the civil side, even though you're acting inside. Like,
you got to think about it. It's a reality, right?
I know.
Like it's
and that's
your
not the
family's
moment where you
livelihood.
think about that. Like, if you're thinking
it's
about
not.
that in a moment where you might need to clear leather, like, God, I can't explain to people how wrong that is and how much that officer does not deserve that additional stress and pressure.
But that's what is expected. Do you understand? So
Yeah.
if that's expected, it's an unrealistic expectation of human performance. We need to adjust to it, right? We need to make it more realistic. So how do they do that? And I think we talked about this a little bit, but Klein wrote a book on recognition prime decision making, which basically says, I've seen something like this before and I did this to solve the problem, or I saw something like this. And so you build that memory, right? And they're firing faster and they solve the problem faster. But you know what you have to do for that? Training.
A lot.
And not just training, the kind of training that guys are going to get hurt in. And I know when they get hurt, they're off the road and the department's paying and they got to pay for medical. I get all of that, but you got to do that kind of training. So, you can crawl, walk, run it, but like we talked about before, chunking, right? Chunking method works. We have to teach them the technique. They have to drill the technique. Then they have to have some type of resistance. Then they have to do it under stress. One weapon. Now there's two weapons. And that's the only reality. We give them that and we do it ad nauseum. Oh, we don't have time. We don't have money. And then the guys don't want to do it. Oh, I don't want to do. They have to understand you got to do it. The department's got to pay for it because it's costing you in lives, civilian lives and law enforcement lives. Because what happens with an officer who's never been punched in the face and you present a threat to him, and he's quick to the gun, right? You're like, punch me, fucker, punch me in the face, go ahead. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
He's not pulling his gun out because he knows how to deal with the minor stuff.
Yeah, if you take tools away and they have limited options and they rapidly escalate through that force continuum, it doesn't surprise me that some of the situations end up the way that they do. And if you're unsure of yourself, I have found at least you're more likely to head to your tool earlier if you're unsure of your actual abilities in the flesh robot. You have no skill with your hands, you're going to tools.
I think that's inevitable, and we've seen that repeatedly.
Yeah, it's unfortunate for sure.
The problem is that in force continuum in law enforcement, the officer presence is what they call it, is step one. You show up in your uniform, you have a presence, and therefore everybody should act nice and kind, and that should resolve it. But the problem is that now the community as a whole doesn't, especially certain communities, don't respect law enforcement. And so that uniform showing up does nothing or maybe makes it worse.
I was going to say, it might throw a little bit of tinder on the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that first step in force continuum is completely useless or negative. It's not the solution, right? Yeah, I agree. Talk to people. And we talked about this earlier when that fight was going outside the gym. In the old days, I'd have been in it, but a little bit smarter, a little bit more experience, a little less testosterone. So, take it easy. I'm going to stay back and watch these guys fight and enjoy it.
Speaking of being in it, I feel like you and Henry probably rolled through LA and got into it a few times.
I got a couple of stories for you then.
And then, okay, I want to hear those, and then I need you to tell me how to beat Henry at jiu-jitsu.
Okay. That's easy, dude. That's so easy. All right, so when I first met Henry, I had come from a very tough group of guys in St. Louis because when Rodrigo weeded out normal people, he had really hardcore guys, right? They're used to getting smashed and beaten, and everybody was a fighter.
Are you saying basically every roll was like a competition? 100%
Every roll was
every
roll was a competition, Warren, and literally everybody in the gym fought. Like everybody, there were guys, Mike Rogers and Hal Goodman and Brian Guidry, and all these guys that fought professionally, and every day was just a knockdown, drag out session. So they were very tough. So when I left St. Louis, I didn't expect or know whether I should expect the guys in LA to be the same, because generally speaking, they were typically cooler, more relaxed, a little bit softer, and Midwestern boys had nothing to do. So, it was fucking or fighting, right? So
That's actually how Henry described it too. It's just like, I grew up around wrestlers. We beat the shit out of each other. It's all we had to do. Okay.
That's it, because the weather's shit and there's not a lot going on and people don't have a lot of money. And so we didn't have the things that LA people. So consequently, they were softer. The Midwesterners had a little harder life. They were a little bit tougher. And so I didn't know what to expect in LA. And, Ferraris and Lamborghinis and actors and musicians and all this crazy shit. And so the first night that I went out with Henry, there's a group of us, but it was mostly me, Henry, and this other guy who, I don't know where he went, but we ended up at a Hugh Hefner party in Hollywood. True story.
This is already everybody's dream story. They're like, what?
Well, it actually kind of worked out against everybody in the room because, right, like everybody is drawn to him. So the chicks didn't want anything to do with the guys there. So like I said, fucking or fighting, that's kind of like what you do in your 20s, right? It's like one thing. So basically, no interest by the girls. Eventually, we're going to leave. And as we're leaving, just across the street is what they call a parking. We call it a parking lot, but they call it a parking structure. So in the parking structure, as Henry and I are walking in, there's two kind of thugged out looking dudes messing with these two kind of preppy looking guys, about the same age. They were probably in their early 20s. And, I had been used to a lot of street activity as a young guy. And I didn't know what the response came. Because, jiu-jitsu can be one thing, but then when you get into something serious, it's not the same. And some guys are great here, but not great here, and vice versa.
Not everybody's a game time player.
That's right. That's right. So I don't know what to expect, and that's not a good feeling when you know shit's about to happen. And so as we're walking up, there are literally like 1 or 2 cars from where we're parked, and then you can see these guys are bullying or robbing these. And as we get closer, they got knives. So I'm going.
Sounds like a shakedown, essentially.
Yeah, I don't know what Henry's going to do, so I'm starting to position myself. I'm kind of moving out and wide to try to get behind a guy, and then Henry's walking up, and I looked at him. He looked at me like, we know this. We're going to engage these guys. We know this is going to happen. And so, okay, well, at least he knows that. He knows to make that eye contact. We're going. So we go over there, and this is I'll never forget. This is great. Henry says, and to be fair, I had way more experience at fighting than Henry, and I didn't expect him to do this, which was great because I thought I'd be the one to kick it off. Henry goes, dude, what the fuck do you have a knife for? Why do you have this fucking knife here? Now, as I'm going around this other guy to his friend, Henry's talking to this first guy. The other 2 dudes run off, whoever they're shaking down.
They're like, oh, thank God somebody else is here. We're out of here.
Yes. So Henry's got his hands up like this. He's like, what the fuck, dude? Why the fuck do you have that knife? And literally, and I'm out of the corner because I'm focused on my guy. He's got his guy, I got my guy. So out of the corner of my eye, I just see Henry go, boom, across this guy's face. Not the knife, not the hand. Boom. And the guy's like, oh, and then Henry starts beating him. And then I kick this dude and start punching him. I got him against the car. I'm working. I look over and Henry's just like slapping him. Like, you shouldn't have fucking brought a knife, dude. Why'd you do that shit? And so long story short, I was like, all right, I'm in the fucking right place.
Yeah.
Just like being home with the boys. And so that kind of like, okay, I can trust him. I know that in this situation he's good, whatever. And then obviously later on, he's like, dude, come live with me. Don't live like this.
Yeah. I mean, because he was doing a lot of bouncing, right? So he was
doing a ton of bouncing.
He was getting reps in off the mat as well.
Probably, but I think he was probably choking a bunch of people out.
That's what I mean. He was just practicing, making sure he's got nice contact.
Yeah, there was a lot of clubs and things like that. And one of the ways to get in when you were not part of the rich crew, the Trustafarian kids, and also if you're the bouncer, then you can let your friends in. And so there was this exchange that occurred with different bouncers in the area, so you could get into any place, right? So you could bypass the security system. So that is one. Now there's another place, and I'll say the name, and I will omit the people, but
or you could go the other way. You could omit the place and say the people. Your choice.
There was a very, very famous club on the Sunset Strip, and on certain nights, and LA is weird because LA isn't like, oh, it's Friday and Saturday night. It'd be like a Tuesday and Thursday, a Brett Bolthouse Productions, and it's this special group of promoters doing this thing, and that's where all
just exploding.
And that's where the beautiful people are, and that's where you're going, and you're a young guy, and you know what you're looking for. So, and for us, to be quite honest, I can say that we never started a fight, but we weren't smart enough ever to walk away from a fight, which now, as you get older, you're smarter. But long story short, we're at the club. Everything's good. Guys are having a good time. We had trained that day. And if we train that day, usually you're a little calmer, right?
Yeah. Got a little bit of it out.
A little bit. And there was a group of us. And also some guys came down from House too. But I won't get into that. So some guys had come down from House and we were going out and whatever. And so we're there and Henry and I are with another one of our roommates, Shane Rice.
I've heard this name. I need to meet this person at some point.
Yeah. He's a character. You need to meet him. So Shane is doing whatever. And Shane's a small dude. He's, I don't know, 5'4" and 140 pounds or something. He's a little dude. And as you know, guys get drunk, and then if they're not getting a girl, they're looking for something else like a fight. And something happened where this dude bumped into Shane, and Shane kept going, and then the dude turned to him and was like, hey, fucker, something midget. And as soon as that happened,
the line has been crossed.
That's it. And at the time, Henry and I and some other guys were kind of sitting in a booth just across, and this is on a dance floor, and there's probably 500 people in this place. And as we're sitting on the table here, we see this, and then the guy said this loud in a club for us to be able to hear. So it's very loud.
Oh, for sure.
And then all of a sudden, I just saw, like a Superman, like Shane just boom, boom, right in this guy's face, dropped him. Well, you never know who's with who, and all of a sudden this guy had like 6 or 7 friends. Probably not fighters, but a bunch of guys, and all of them descended upon Shane. And so then obviously all of us were in it, and it was straight out of a movie. Literally, we're punching, kicking, choking, and like I'm watching Henry here, I'm watching Shane here, a couple of the half guys here, and we're destroying the place only because, again, we have that magic that is unknown. And
you're going up against drunk fuckers, which doubles the power of the magic.
I'm not suggesting we were sober.
But you still, okay, so then that just means you had regular magic, not double magic.
Yes, but it's good training. So I'm looking around, and obviously I'm complicit. So we're doing our stuff, and I'm looking around, and at some point when it gets so big, the whole club is like clearing out. Like people are running out of the club. This is a big club. People are running out of the club. And basically, what ended up happening is we finished it. So by the time we got done, all the dudes are there. A couple bouncers jumped in, which in their defense, that's their job. And I feel bad about that, but you came to the fight, and we were amped up, and that's what happened. So they shut down Sunset Strip, not the bar, Sunset Strip.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So they said these guys are going nuts trying to find us, and we're bobbing and weaving and dodging outside. And as you know, in chaos, you can operate in chaos because they can't really find where you at, this guy, and you're looking all over the place. And we get Shane into the trunk of a car. We get him out. The helicopters, it was nuts. We didn't start the fight. We just finished the fight, but it became so big. It became a melee. And it was kind of days like that where I was like, okay, it's just like being at home. It's just literally like being back with the guys from St. Louis. And
you knew you found your right crew.
Yeah, I did, and they were great. And there were only a handful of them because there were a lot of guys that would come that were Trustafarians and train and do whatever. But those guys, they were reliable.
Trustafarians is a good term.
Yeah, that's what they were, bro.
Were you around Hickson's gym at all when they would come in? People would come in for the old Gracie Challenge action?
No. So that was at Pico, and I came in at the end of Pico. I did a couple tournaments when they were at Pico, but when I moved out there, they had just gone to Pacific Palisades. They were in the basement, like a karate school in Pacific Palisades. So I didn't see any of those, but I'll tell you this, we had more than one of those in St. Louis.
Really?
And so what would happen is you'd have martial artists who would want a challenge, and they didn't understand what jiu-jitsu was. And again, I know this argues kind of against your point, but it was magic. They had no idea what the fuck it was. So they would come in and they would talk shit and whatever, and they'd be aggro. And Rodrigo, again, not a businessman, a jiu-jitsu guy, a fighter from Brazil, where the laws are very different in Brazil. People behave very differently. That threshold to like, I'm going to kill you is right here. Whereas in America, it's up here. And the value of life is completely different. So they'd come in and they'd talk shit. And again, facial expressions, like they'd say something and already they're in trouble because they're frowning at him and not smiling at him. So he's like, oh, boy, bud, want to fight. and it'd be go lock the door, there's going to be a fight. So there'd be guys come through and do that stuff. And
they would want to fight him, or
they'd want to fight whoever. And this would happen. And I'll tell you one other story about this, but basically we would have guys come in and do this. And then sometimes it would be covert. Like they'd come in and they'd watch a class to try and figure it out. And I was sitting,
because you can definitely figure it out after watching a class.
No, but you think you can. That's the trick, right?
Yeah.
So I had there was a guy who used to be part of our team that fought in the UFC. His name was Steve Berger. He's sitting out one day. He was hurt. He's sitting on the bench, and we're rolling and doing hard training. But you probably look like a pussy because you have no idea what. They're just rolling around, grabbing each other.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Why are these guys laying on top of
each
other?
It's so weird. And he sat there and he's like, I could beat all these guys. Look at that guy. I don't know how he can beat anybody. That guy's such a pussy. Look at him. He's like, and he singled me out. This is great. He singled me out. And then of course, Steve didn't tell me until after the class. And so he tells me, I'm like, dude, why did you wait to tell me? And so he's like, I don't know. 2 weeks goes by. Guess who came back? And Steve walks to me, hey dude, there's that guy. And I'm like, fuck you. Cause I didn't believe him at that point. Yeah. I just wanted to murder this dude. So there's that guy. Okay. I said, dude, seriously. He goes, no, bro, I swear to God on my life, that's the dude. And then I asked Rodrigo. Rodrigo's like, well, buddy, that's the guy. so I'm like, okay. And I said, Rodrigo, hey, I got a green light on this? Am I good to go? And he's like, buddy, gotta be. Well, gotta be, buddy. And so I'm like, all right, so I know. And now, I'm a dumbass because, at that time I was still subject to the UCMJ too.
Oh shit, that's right.
So really dumb. But so I'm okay, you sure? Bud. Okay, so I'm good. So I'm going with him. Choke, tap. I'm looking at Rodrigo. Rodrigo's like, okay.
Second tap today.
Tap, 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 tap. Sleep. Okay, he goes to sleep. He wakes up. He doesn't really know what happened. And we start going again. He's like, get behind him, choke, sleep. And then I went to knee and stomach, holding him. He starts crying. Dude, stop crying. You said you were going to beat my ass.
Yeah.
You could do this. You stop crying. Do it. Oh, so I started crying. I said, listen, I don't want you to cry to me. I don't want to beat you up. You're a punk. You came in and said something in a school that was very disrespectful. You didn't know anybody in here. I want you to walk around to everybody on the mat. And there's probably 20-something, 25 guys, 26 guys. I want you to walk around to everybody on the mat. You apologize to everybody. You shake their hand and you ask for their forgiveness. He goes, okay. And he walked around the gym and did that, saying, now get the fuck out.
Could be one of the most important things that happened in that guy's life, to be honest.
You try to balance it, right?
Yeah.
It's one of the other things. So that is a well-known story in our little community. But another thing that happened, Rodrigo, in the old days, not now, if a dojo talks shit about you, you go to that dojo. And
Dojo storming. I've heard of this.
Dojo storming.
Often talked about, never seen. Through my eyes.
Well, let me tell you, there was a school, and it's probably still there now because people believe crazy shit. And they buy into it and they pay for it and whatever. But
all you have to do is go on YouTube to find examples of this. The no-touch fill in the blank.
Well, I got one on YouTube too with a kung fu guy who said that jiu-jitsu was like kindergarten.
That's on YouTube?
Yeah,
we need to
YouTube
talk
too.
about that next.
Yeah. So, long story short, Rodrigo had a guy come in from another school. The guy talked shit, and he talked shit to his students.
Non-jiu-jitsu school or jiu-jitsu school? The guy that...
Ninjutsu. So this is... So I remember this.
You're talking split-toed booties with...
full gear. So I will tell you, it was called...
With the metal paw climbers?
No metal, but split toe and all black and all like kitted out with like sleeves that tied around their fingers and like
I only
weird
have
shit.
one question. Did he have a sash on?
No sash.
Fucking bullshit.
Yeah, but
those are my favorite martial artists.
Oh, that's kung fu, man. But he was a true ninja. He didn't wear his mask, but he was a true ninja. No metal.
Fuck.
So the guy, if you ask me questions about names and places, there's very few that I can remember. I don't retain some of that stuff if it's not important to me. But this one was called the Missouri Bujinkan Ninjutsu Center, and the guy that ran it, I'm calling him out because he's a fucktard. Was named Ken Harding. And so this guy was telling his students crazy shit. Rodrigo, mount up. Everybody in a car, we're going over there and we're going to talk about this. And it was like, okay, your guy said this shit, let's go. And every jiu-jitsu white belt beat the shit out of all their guys. The guy had nothing to say. And then after it got done, he told all his students, and this came back third party, but, oh, those were all black belts dressed up as white belts. Like, no, dude, those were all white belts. Nobody had been training more than a year and a half when that happened.
I don't even know the principles of ninjutsu. I'm trying to figure out what a ninjutsu versus jujitsu fight would look like.
It's probably on YouTube, but I don't know. I mean, you can look up that school. People believe the craziest shit, and all the data's out there for them to look at reality.
And, well, even more so in the modern era. I mean, when did the UFC start?
I think November 93-ish.
So, yeah, before then, I could see the era of the snake oil salesman booming. But as it went on and on
it's
and
there.
on, and it's the testing ground, and now people are watching that and like, no.
Cognitive dissonance. Like,
yeah. They're like, no, none of that. I need to have a smoke bomb and a sash and a mask. Like, what? What are you talking about? I love the videos. Like, McDojo Life on Instagram is one of my favorite. Just the crazy martial arts shit. But I almost never watch, like, the teacher. I watch the people in the background, or what do they call it? An uki, the person he's demonstrating on. It's like, are you fucking kidding me that you're participating in this? You're likely paying money to participate in this.
Yeah, but they're out of touch with reality. They're generally weak people, and this is how I think. I'm sure you've seen this. The one in Chicago, the Dim Mak guy, right? The death touch, the boom, like the George Dillman stuff. Who this nerdy kid said, "Come on down if you want to get your ass beat," and then a bunch of jiu-jitsu guys showed up and they're like, well, it doesn't work on athletes. Like, what the fuck? Who do you think I'm going to be fighting?
It doesn't work on athletes.
But you gotta watch. If you haven't seen, you should have seen this by now. But if you haven't seen this, you gotta watch. It's embarrassing. But people believe it. People believe all kinds of bullshit.
It's unfortunate. People are more malleable. My faith in people has been going down over the course of 2020. The pandemic didn't help. The election, which seems like it started one day after the other election ended, didn't help. I am utterly baffled by how incredibly malleable people actually are. I would have argued years ago that, like, no, we're good, critical, objective thinkers. We're not going to fall into this bullshit. And some of the things that I have heard over the last year absolutely blow my mind. It's I don't know what to say about it, and it doesn't give me a lot of hope.
I wish I could disagree with you, but we get back to that same thing we were talking about with law enforcement, which is unrealistic expectations of human performance. I mean, we're designed the way we are, and we're an advanced breed of monkeys, and that's kind of where we're stuck at the moment. Yeah.
Kung Fu Guy. Tell me about Kung Fu Guy.
So,
Because this involved a little bit of your EP work as well, right?
Yeah, so... Dude, none of these stories have come out in public, and now this is going to be a podcast on stories. This one is probably, I think there's like 1 million views on this, which for me, who lives in obscurity, that's crazy. But I was working for a client, a famous musician who was on tour, and we were on the East Coast at the time, and he brought out his martial arts instructor, which for me is great because maybe I get some downtime and he gets downtime, and now we can train together. That's the best thing, right? I started Muay Thai that way. It was awesome. So I'm excited, and the guy gets there, and he's about the same age. He's about the same size, but he's a little pudgier than I am. And his name's Joe, and so they call him Kung Fu Joe. And basically, he's brought out on paid position to teach this celebrity while he tours around the world Kung Fu. And my client, likes that stuff, and that's great. I appreciate that. Different strokes for different folks. So I don't say anything. I never would say, oh, Kung Fu sucks or this sucks. Like, Jiu-Jitsu's the best. I wouldn't say it. So I didn't say that to him. I didn't say anything. So when the guy came in, he introduced us, and he introduced us as, martial artist, and you guys should train together, do something. And in a nutshell, the guy came back very quickly. If you don't know somebody, throwing stuff out there like this is pretty strong. But he's like, oh, what do you do? I said, oh, jiu-jitsu. He's like, oh, kind of laughs like, whoa, that's a little offensive. Like right away you're laughing at jiu-jitsu.
It's a value judgment right off the bat. And the judgment being what I do is awesome and your shit's comical.
Well, but so that's what the laugh insinuates, but that's not where it stopped. He said, I said, well, why do you laugh? He said, well, that's kind of like kindergarten. And what I do, the style of Kung Fu I do, and I couldn't even remember the name of it, but the style of Kung Fu I do is like university level. And at that point, I'm sure you felt this feeling where you're in a controlled environment. I have my client who pays me, has brought out this tool, and I have to maintain composure, and I'm getting hot. I said, oh, really? Well, the only way that we can find out if that's true is if we train together and spar. He's like, yeah, because he doesn't expect that that's going to happen. So I said, cool, so you're good with it? Yeah, I'm good with it. So nice to meet you. I go over and I text Henzo, because we're in we're in Homedale, New Jersey at PNC. And I text Henzo, hey man, I got this Kung Fu guy that says jiu-jitsu's like kindergarten, and I want a place to fight him. Can you help me out? And he's like, poor buddy, I'll be there in 15 minutes. It's like, oh shit, I can't, Henzo, I can't do it today, we gotta do it tomorrow. He's like, no problem. And so the next day, I get the guy, hey, we need some gear, and I'm grabbing some stuff, and let's go here, and I open up the emergency kit, and I pull out Vaseline. Well, I'm going to put Vaseline on my face, obviously, because I'm trying to reduce cuts and abrasions just in this general area. And he's like, well, what are you getting that for? Which is an indicator, right? You're not used to fighting, because anybody that fights...
Because you haven't been struck in the face, because you obviously don't want it to go straight in and tear.
Yes.
You want it to glance.
Yes. So he's like... And you see like the demeanor change. It kind of goes from cocky to like, oh shit, what happened? And then he's like, oh, like, are you gonna try and kill me? I'm like, dude, I'm gonna have you do Kung Fu. and I'm going to do jujitsu, and we're going to see what happens. And if what you say is true, I'll come study under you. Because imagine, I don't know what I don't know. What if he has some magic kung fu that I don't know? Okay, great. And then he beats the shit out of me, and I'm good.
You'd probably want some of that jam.
That's it.
Yeah.
So Renzo shows up, black Range Rover, brand new. Where's the kung fu motherfucker? And he's standing right next to me. And then Holes, do you know who Holes Gracie is? Holes is like fucking 7 foot. Holes a big motherfucker. Holes also like a 5th degree black belt.
Born doing jujitsu
Yes,
in the womb. He was shrimping in the womb.
You know who his dad is, Holes Gracie. Like,
yeah. He shrimped his way out of the womb.
Yes. So Renzo, where that kung fu motherfucker? I'm like, well, actually, it's this guy right here. So my client, this guy, and his friend pile into this car. Like, we're like this in a Range Rover. And they take us to the Renzo's Homedale location, which I think was Holes at the time, but it was Renzo Gracie, Homedale, New Jersey. And Renzo's another level. Like, that dude is just, he's another level. Kindest guy, awesome. His energy, his different human. And he's like, brother, let me show you the gym. And so we're coming to have a fight, and he wants to stop and show me the gym. So show you the gym. Look at the locker rooms. Look at that. Fuck, it's beautiful. Renzo, can we go over here? Brother, look, take it easy. Gonna smash him, buddy. So we go in, and it's okay. Stretch out a little bit, put this stuff on, and he's kind of doing whatever. But the kung fu guys move weird. They kind of come at you in weird ways. So I don't know what the fuck he's doing to start. So as we start. In the beginning, Hans was like, "Well, buddy, just use the open hands, just take it easy." And he was talking to me, not the guy. And you can see him in the video sitting on the side of the mat watching it. So my client, Kung Fu Joe's buddy, Renzo and Holes are in the room. And now we start. And Renzo's like, dude, come on, don't, he's like, do what you got to do to make
keep it within reason.
Do what you got to do to make your point, So we have a little, punch, kick, slap, whatever on the ground, choke, and it's done in 10 seconds. We go again. And it's done in 10 seconds. So go again, the same thing. It's like, it's just over and over. And, he tries weird stuff. And then I put him in an arm triangle. He's trying to stick his finger in my eye and weird shit. And it's like he's not even fighting, because he's like, he walks at me like in a weird way. He's not really throwing punches or kicks. He's doing some weird shit, but it's like, arm bar, triangle, just boom, 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 boom. And so this video that was taken by his buddy was given to me, and I put it up because I think it's a good lesson to see. And again, I'm not going crazy hard with this dude. I'm not blasting. Yeah. No elbows, no knees, no headbutts, no. And as we're leaving, he tells Renzo, "Hey, it was great to meet you. I never met a UFC fighter. I'm going to tell my master, maybe my master can come show you some of the stuff." And I'm like, that fucking lesson was completely lost on him. Real. Like, his behavior toward me changed.
Yeah.
After that, very nice, very friendly, very easygoing. And
I wonder if he even realized how bad it could have been. Just dropping elbow. Like the amount of destruction.
We'll look at it, and you can tell me, like, it could have been disastrous.
I already know how it went. I mean, just you're describing the movement pattern.
Yeah.
If you can hold a dominant position, you're just again, weight, gravity, strength.
It's we're fucking around. And it's not pretty. And Renzo's giving me rules, and then at some point he's like, "Don't kick or throw hand strikes. Just do takedowns and submissions." And like, he's sitting there, and Joe actually was like, "Well, that's my art." Like, he's like, "I'm not talking to you." He didn't use that accent. Well, buddy, not talk to you.
Oh my Lord.
So yeah, that's a good one to watch. I get a lot of stuff like, those guys both look like shitbags. Those guys suck. That was his first day of Kung Fu. That guy looks like a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. Like, the internet guys.
Yeah. They're known as keyboard warriors.
And they are that.
They are exactly that. So, EP question. Let's go no names. What is the craziest shit you had to deal with while in an EP capacity? Because people may not realize in that role, in that protective role, you're actually pretty close often, meaning proximity-wise, you see, here. Deal with some wild shit from your principal.
Yeah, so probably some bad shit, really bad shit in Latin America that I probably shouldn't talk about simply because it hasn't been put out. So on my side, I have obviously a confidentiality agreement with the clients.
Yep.
But some of them talk about these things, and some of them post names. So like, let's say if we're doing something governmental or executive or even with NGOs, we don't typically post who we're protecting. right? That's confidential.
That's a good policy.
Yeah. But if it's an entertainer, we do. And the reason we do is because they post our name up. Well, if it's already out there, then we'll use that as leverage. Hey, we take care of this person, this person. So a couple stories that came out, two that came out. The first one was when I had an issue that I had to deal with. I had to go hands-on with somebody. We were in Europe, and I won't say the country, but a very lethargic type country. And the security, local national security, especially concerts. So security for concerts and entertainers is the lowest level security, to be quite frank. And I'm not trying to trash other guys, but
they're
it's
there
just
with a heartbeat. They're doing a minimum wage job. They're there at the heartbeat.
It's just the lowest level. It's untrained. It's uneducated. It's bad. So we're in a foreign country, and the thing for them is they're getting paid to stand there, essentially, and they can have some type of credential sheet that they're looking at, and they're trying to verify if the person's coming through an access point, if they're valid or not, and they get denied access, but they don't even have the ability to stop somebody. So a lot of times it's shit. So we have a layered security approach to everything in security. So, first you deter them, right? And you have these layers. So on the outer layer, you have police and dogs and whatever else, and doors and security staff and all this stuff. And you have barricades and checkpoints and things like that. And then you try to detect when you have a breach, and you try to delay that breach so that you can go in and respond to it and then mitigate the threat. So you set up that structure. So even though we do that, if we have a person at that point that's critical, that's not doing their job, they're the weak link. So we have this infrastructure set up, and they just keep finding the weak link, and then they breach. So I had a guy in this country who had breached 2 points of security and then breached a third point, and it was onto a stage. And on either end of the stage, I have these huge security dudes who are with the tour. Now, I mean like huge. I'm not talking about... I know the
exact type, and they're probably
talking
wearing
about
a children's medium T-shirt.
Medium, yeah. So, like, these guys, I'm talking about 450. They're big boys, and I'm the tiny guy. So even, like, when we're talking about jiu-jitsu, like, I'm the tiny dude, right? I'm 175 pounds. I'm a little guy. So I'm the guy on the team that's thinking and processing and setting things up and organizing and trying to stop it from happening. And then when it does, ultimately I become the guy that responds too, which sucks, but it's what it is. So these guys are there, and I'm getting a call on the radio. So just like with an in-ear mic, and they're saying, hey, this is going on, this guy's here, and they can't leave their position, which is good on them because they shouldn't be leaving their positions. But they're identifying that thing. Okay, this breach is about to happen. This guy gets up here, he gets past it, and then they get hands-on with him. He's a squirrely guy. I don't know. If you fight smaller, stringy people that are aggressive, they're hard to deal with. Harder than big people.
They're like monkeys.
Yeah. So he was one of them. And then we got him off, and we got him back out, and I told the guys to take him out of the venue. And this is like maybe a 15,000-seater venue. So he had breached 2 or 3 points of security, and then our team, which wasn't my team, but guys on the team that I was on, were there. They got him. Okay, good. So I get a call, and this is toward the end of the show. This guy's moving to another position because the guy that's playing this kit is moving around. He's the drum kit. He's moving around from all these different points. So the security guy is mirroring him, right? So the security at point 1, breach. Security at point 2, which is at the barricade, breach. Security at point 3, which is the stage stairs that go up on the stage, breach. Same guy, second time. So I grab him, pull back. This time,
at least I like his no quit attitude.
Oh, he didn't quit. He was serious. So unfortunately, as I'm taking him out and past the barricade, he starts elbowing me and kicking back into me. And at the time, this was many years ago, well past the statute of limitations in this particular country, I was a dumbass. And as a dumbass, oh, motherfucker, are you serious? Like, you breached once, you ended up staying inside even though you're supposed to be gone. Now you're going to fight me. Okay. So I'm fighting him, not jiu-jitsu. I'm fighting him, punch, kick. And I got to a position where I was kind of off the angle, and I grabbed his shoulder, his head, and I kneed him twice in the face. Well, just as I'm kneeing him in the face, the local national police are rolling up on me. So I'm like, fuck. So you can't explain that away. You can't explain it. Like, I'm a foreigner in a foreign country. I'm kneeing this guy in the face. Okay. So I run. So I run back into a controlled area, knowing nobody's going to stop the cops. So I run back across the stage. The cops didn't want to go on the stage, right? Because like, oh, fuck, I'm not going to stand up there in that spotlight and have problems. Luckily, it was the last song of the show. And I went off on the opposite side. So it happened on stage right. I went off on stage left and went back to the dressing rooms. And I told the guy, there's a production manager, Kanzi. I told him, hey, I just had this issue. I got to get out of here. And I'm telling him what's going on. Well, the artists come rolling out, and he tells him, hey, Todd had an issue with this. You got to go. And one of them just fucking eats it up. Fuck yeah, woo woo! He's so happy. So then he's like, take this, and he's got all this kind of, it's not a hip hop band, it's a rock band. He's got all this hip hop gear, and he throws me his t-shirt, he throws his hat, I'm covering up. They throw me in the fucking trunk, and I'm in the artist vehicle in the trunk, and they roll me out. And so the shitty part, and this is on me, the shitty part is after that, they locked down the venue. They wouldn't let the patrons go, they wouldn't let the crew go.
Oh, shit.
And to this day, I owe a really big thanks to the promoter, and I'll see him, who happens to be a Muay Thai guy in this particular country, who didn't give me up. He had my passport details. He had everything. He gave me up. So we get in the car. We're driving off. I never come out of the trunk until we hit the tarmac. So FBO, right?
Yeah, private.
A private airport for you guys.
Fixed-based operation.
Yes. So an FBO is private airport. So for these rich rock stars that are flying in and out on private jets, unlike like going to the airport and going through all these layers of security, especially in the old days, we pull the car up through the security gate up to the jet. Yep.
Straight up the
come
stairs.
out, straight up the steps, and then we'd move. And in the security world, that's great because your exposure is reduced that way. You don't have to go through all these choke points and basically be sitting on the X, right?
Yeah.
So we get there, they do that. I come on, and I'm thinking, man, I'm kind of fucked because I don't have my passport with me. And I'm
assuming it's probably an international flight too.
Yes, and it's an international flight. I'm like, fuck. And even if it wasn't an international flight, I couldn't stay in that country, so I had to get out.
Yeah.
So they were going to one spot, and then the flight crew is going to another. So first thing is, when you have private flights, you have flight manifests. Who's on the plane, right? All the details, and especially when you're going international, because the first thing, either you get off and go into a customs integration, or they come up on the plane, which with rock stars and movie stars, normally they come up onto the plane because you arrange that in advance if you're a good advanced guy. So they come on the plane and they check everything out, whatever. So I wasn't on the manifest. I didn't have my passport. And now we're going to a foreign country, and I can't be where that plane landed because now I'm associated with them. And if they find out that I went with them, I'm fucked.
Yeah. And so are they probably.
And so are they. And the crew, again, I owe a lot of people a lot of things. The crew were like, yeah, we're down with it. In any other case, I would think, man, I'm so screwed with my client that this happened. But they loved it. They went nuts. They're partying. They're high-fiving. They're yeah, motherfucker. I guess because I was straight and narrow military law enforcement, and now they saw a different side. Yeah. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, yeah, you crossed over to our team.
Welcome to the dark.
Now you're like us. So,
but also, we own you, motherfucker.
You know what? I was in debt to them for a while, and they treated me like gold. So that was one me leaving. There's a story that's out there with Tommy Lee. When we were on Motley Crue, Tommy used to do DJ gigs. Like Tommy loved DJing. So not drum playing, DJing.
Yeah.
So he
like
loved,
record scratching.
Yeah,
type
not
stuff?
so much record scratching, more knob turning. Like,
okay.
He was
very electronic DJ.
Very, very EDM guy, and go to all the EDM stuff. And I wasn't Tommy's personal guy. I was the advanced site survey venue guy, and I was the overall guy. So they call me the tour security director, which doesn't mean anything. It's just a title. But I did the advanced site survey, which they call venue security. And then I set everything up, and I did all the legal stuff, and I put it into place and then made sure it happened. So I wasn't supposed to be with Tommy. And Tommy decides through his management team and some other entities that he's going to take this gig in Eastern Europe. And this country hadn't been too many years out of war. And essentially what happens, and I'm sure you're aware of this too, is they follow the money and they need to clean money and do stuff like that. So what happens is these war criminals then become like concert promoters and or whatever else. This guy was promoting a new event, and it was a very high-end thing. But basically he was going to give Tommy X amount of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, to come and perform his set. So it was
his DJ set.
It was DJ and drums. But that guy didn't want him for DJ because Tommy Lee is famous for being a drummer, not a DJ.
I actually didn't know that he DJ'd.
Yeah, but trust me, that was his thing. Now this is years ago. This is more than 10 years ago, right? It's 15 probably. But that was his big thing. Like he went to Vegas and did that in Vegas all the time. Vince lived in Vegas. I don't know where he's at now. I don't know where any of these guys are. But so Tommy says, okay, we're going to do this. And the guy that's doing security for him, again, to his credit, is a big Samoan dude, really sweet guy. It's like, bro, I don't know nothing about this shit, man. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, man, there's all kinds of shit happening here, because it was a war zone. And he's like, bro, you were in the military, bro. You take I'm like, that's not my area of operation. You know, I know some stuff, but I don't, you know, that I don't know specifics to that. And I don't know the promoter. And also it's really bad when that guy is sending the plane, he's sending the car service, and we don't have contacts on the ground, because the most important thing is, as you know, the guys on the ground that are there in real time telling you what's happening, those guys are critical.
Yeah, it's gold.
Absolutely. So I don't have that. So I'm going in blind, and all the assets that we have, air and ground, are the promoters. So now we're upside down. So basically, he's telling me this in other words, and I'm saying, okay, all right, bro. Actually, he didn't say bro. He said, dog, hey, dog. That's exactly what he said. Dog, hey, dog, you think you could do this one? And we had just finished a concert. So the advanced guy comes in at like 6, 7 in the morning and then leaves at 2 in the morning. And now the show's done and he's flying to another place to do another thing. So I say, yeah, man, all right. Because he was worried. And I get it. Because, you know, when you have the skills to deal with something and someone else doesn't, and then they ask you to do it, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't want to do this, but
I'm going to do it because it's the right thing to do.
It is right. And it was the right thing. And thank God that's what happened. So on the fly, I'm calling to the RSO shop and the MSG shop. So at a U.S. embassy in that Eastern European country, I'm saying, hey, this is who I am. This is who I'm coming in with. This is what's going on. I want you to know, because I don't have a lot of details and I'm not sure what's happening. And I happen to have a Marine Corps relationship with one of the MSGers. Marine security guards don't have a lot of pull when it comes to the State Department, but the regional security officer does. Yeah. And so he connected me to the regional security officer, and I said, hey, this is what's going on and this is what we're doing in your area, which is kind of nice to tell them because they want information, because they're briefing all the entities and powers that be, and then they can, if something happens, they can know, okay, this is not some random thing. This guy called in and he checked in. So I just, hey, I'm in your area. I want you to know I'm coming here. We're doing this thing. So we get there. When we get there, it's a nice place, upscale stuff, a lot of money, and a lot of extracurricular things going on. And so Tommy comes in and he's like, okay, we got this, we got that. It was me, Tommy, the drum tech, and his assistant. Sets up the kit, whatever. They're doing this thing. Other people are there, other DJs, other entities. And in doing this, I'm kind of trying to assess, I can't leave Tommy, but I'm trying to assess the environment as you would. Like, okay, that's there, these guys are. There's dudes with AKs, right? Plainclothes dudes, AKs outside. Like, okay, that sucks.
Power move.
Super power move. So like, okay, that sucks. We don't
we
have
are
like
undergunned here currently.
Yeah, no safe room, nowhere to shelter in place. Everything's wide open. Like there's no hard points in the room. It's like almost like a banquet. Yeah, it's shitty. It's shitty. So okay, it sucks. So Tommy plays drums for a few minutes, goes over and starts DJing. Now of course he loves drums, but he really went nuts on the DJ knobs, doing his thing, whatever. He's doing it for a long time. And then I have this Eastern European guy come over and say, Tommy is not playing the drums. And I'm like, I don't control that. I'm the security guy, and he has artistic freedom to kind of express himself. Now, imagine me trying to tell this. He's like, whatever. So, in the scale of things, security's down here, right? Yeah. And then there's the guy in country and Tommy. Those are the guys at the top. So he's kind of blows me off a little bit, but he's coming to me as the point of contact because I'm between the guy that he wants to deal with, right? Like I'm here, so he comes to me and tells me. Okay, so Tommy's feeling it. He's in the zone for whatever reason and doing his thing. And when it gets to kind of a slow point, I say, hey, dude, hey, go back on the drum kit. The promoter's losing his mind. And just go back on the drum kit for a little while. And Tommy is, he feels things. So he's like, yeah, bro, yeah, oh, yeah, bro. And he's doing his thing and doesn't go back and like, dancing, moving knobs. And the promoter guy, 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by. Promoter guy comes back over. You'll give me my money back.
Oh,
and I'm like, dude, I don't have the money. You wired that to LA, and this is like 3:00 in the morning in Eastern Europe, and it's whatever Saturday. Banks are closed. I can't do that. Tommy is supposed to play drums, and I'm like, listen, I'm gonna get him on. So I go over and then I use aggressive language with Tommy. And when you're on a protection detail, you don't talk to principals that way. Right. So he
They're
knows.
the ones writing the checks.
Yeah. So he knows something's up, even with whatever condition he was in. So he's like, I'm like, dude, you gotta get on the fucking drums right now. I'm not asking you. I'm gonna fucking put you on the drum. And then he's like, okay, alert. And he goes back to the drums. And I go to Steve-O, who's the drum tech. Hey, what do you have? Do you have knives? Do you have screwdrivers? Do you have? I'm just looking for something, like anything, right? Like I have nothing. I have no gun. I have nothing. So I just want something, right? Because if I got to deal with somebody, at least I have an option, right? So he's like, what?
Drum tech guy's not ready for that.
No, drum tech guy. I'm one of the few people that doesn't partake in certain activities in the entertainment industry, and so they're usually somewhere else in space on whatever they do, and so I get that, but I'm like, dude, I'm physically holding him now. I've never touched this person. I need whatever you have that's hard and sharp. Like, give me whatever. He's like, what the fuck? So, of course, I probably did the wrong thing. I probably should have looked for it myself because now I got him wound up. But it's serious. Like, this is not going to turn out good. And the assistant, I don't know where the fuck the assistant was, this guy with long bleached blonde hair who was out doing whatever in his True Religion jeans. I can't remember what he's doing, but he's doing something else. And I finally get him, hey, it ends. Tommy decides it's done, and we're leaving, and the promoter is there, and then he's like, and then now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys, all armed, standing there. And then he's trying to tell Tommy, hey, I want my money back. You didn't play drums, blah, blah, blah. So, okay, he can't deal with that. He's, he's a rock star. He got
doing rock star things.
Doing rock star. So I step up and say, dude, listen, we'll get your money. We need somewhere to go make phone calls. It's quiet. We need somewhere that these guys can sit. I need him to talk to his guy. His guy's going to, the accountant, the lawyer, the manager, those guys, they're going to feel like he's under duress. Let me get him in a calm spot. He's upset right now. Let me get him here. We'll get you your money. And that's all that guy cared about. He just wanted his money. So it's on his site that had a couple almost like apartment complexes. And he's like, you can use this room because it was dedicated as a changing room, right? Well, we didn't change. So, okay, this room's here for, okay, good. So we go in the room and he's freaking out. And he's not scared of anything. Tommy doesn't give a fuck about anything. So he's not scared normally. So when he's visibly scared, that's a problem.
Yeah.
So I get those guys in there. There's a refrigerator. I move it against the door. There's a couch. I move it against the door. I try to see kind of what I can do to cover up windows and stuff. And now I'm calling the RSO saying, hey, bro.
Remember when I said I was coming your way?
Sorry about this 4 a.m. call from this dude you don't really know. And telling him what's going on. He's asked me to explain it, and I'm telling him, walking through step by step, because he needs me to articulate it so that he can frame it a certain way and then provide help. Well, as you know, they send local national support. Well, the first thing they did, they contacted their local national liaison, and then he sent out a local cop. Local cop shows up outside. Promoter guy sends the cops away because they're complicit. They're part of it. He's paying them, so it's useless. So I call him back and say, hey, man, the cavalry just sent. They got shut down. They're gone. He's like, oh, let me find out. And luckily, I got to be careful I say this, but luckily at the time, this country was trying to get into the United Nations, or excuse me, the EU. And trying to get in the EU is very strict. And so they had something like to stick and carrot the guys to correct this problem. So he calls the equivalent of state police, the regional police. And they come out and they're arguing with them. And then at that time, I pulled stuff out and I popped out the door and told them to shut it behind me. And said, hey, this guy doesn't speak English. I don't speak the Slavic language. And we're talking, and I explained to him that I need him to accompany us out. I said, you can't go in the car or whatever. We'll call a taxi for you. You can go in the taxi. I'll take you out. So we get the guys in the car. He takes us out. As he takes us out, he cuts off. The taxi goes the other end. And like he's leaving. It's like an escort for 30 seconds out off the front. Fuck. So as we're out, all of a sudden, my phone's blowing up because the promoter doesn't have Tommy's phone. He has my phone. It's blowing up. And then there's a car following us. And I'm telling like the driver, hey, don't do this, don't do that. I'm not answering my phone. And the driver's phone starts ringing.
Oh, shit.
And I'm like, motherfucker. And he's talking. I can't understand a word he's saying because it's Slavic. And so he's, okay. He's talking. I'm like, no. He said, we go back. We go back. I'm like, no, we don't go back. We go here. And I'm telling the driver, we're going to the embassy. We're not going to the embassy. We're going to the FBO. There's another guy, DJ Murillo, really wealthy guy, very popular DJ. I don't know that world, but he had a jet on the tarmac at that same time. So we're going to that jet. And, it's owned by somebody we know.
Yeah.
So we're going there, but I don't want to tell him that. I want to show up at the embassy. So this guy gets another call, and it's boom, I threw his, he's yelling. I'm like, here's all the cash I have. I don't give a fuck about your phone. You can't be on the phone anymore. Here's the cash to buy a new phone. We go, and essentially this car kind of veers off behind us, and I think I don't know where it went, but it was his guys. They veer off behind us. He takes a turn where he was supposed to go one way. He takes another turn. We go to the tarmac. DJ Murillo lets us use his plane. We got to sit there and wait for him, and we got out. And so that particular situation is as shitty as it can be when you're unarmed in a country you don't know, no advanced guy. Now, nobody got hurt.
Luckily.
But the only reason I can tell this, there are some very bad, violent stories, but if I tell those, it's bad for my business. But that's where I can tell, because Tommy came out and said it. I think he said that the UN saved him, but it wasn't obviously the UN, it was the State Department. But he doesn't know the difference between, DOS and an RSO and any of that stuff. But at the end of the day,
surprised he could remember it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really weird to see someone who is never scared of anything, is very default aggressive, and then all of a sudden it's like, fuck dude, and say,
chinks in the armor.
Yeah, calm down. We're gonna get through this. This is how we're gonna do it, and so that kind of stuff happens on the entertainment side, but the problems that we've had usually are executive or NGO or diplomat type in Latin America. Those are our real nasty problems, mostly because of corruption, because people on the inside are giving information up, and that's where we've had some bad days there. But
that's where you earn your keep.
Yeah, really. It's exactly right. And so we try there to be as low pro as possible, in and out. And I got a text last night from Maynard, and I asked him, I said, I'm going on this podcast, do you have any stories that you feel you're comfortable sharing and stuff like that? And one of the things he mentioned was going to Mexico, and, I'd full in brief, right? Like 30-page document on everything. There's maps, there's, hey, don't do this, don't do that, blah, blah, blah. This is what's happening in the country. This is where we're going. This is what it's doing. Here are all these points on the map. Here's the embassy. Here's the trauma level 1 hospital. So all the data is there. He's got, and you read them in, but they don't really understand it, right? Yeah. And they're used to what they're used to. So they don't have any conditioning for that kind of environment. And we pull up into this festival site. It's not Tulum, but it's one of those cities. El Tajín was the name of it. And as we're pulling up into the El Tajín festival site, all of a sudden it's tank and tank, please tank. And he's like, what the fuck's going on? I'm like, well, dude, there's a lot of shit happening here. And if you read that brief, which to Maynard's credit, he does read the briefs, and I question him on it. He's like, oh, fuck, man. And I said, what are they for? I'm like, for us to have a safe event, because if we don't, and now we have these counter briefings in Mexico. We're like, hey, if this happens and you see this local national guy step out of the way when someone's walking up to you, just go with it. Because if he's stepping out of the way, he knows who they are, he knows what's going on, and you're going to need to kiss the ring. and normally I'm the opposite guy, because I'm fuck no, you're not going to talk to me, you're not gonna, and I'm keeping that space, right? And I've got some type of reactionary gap. So that's the opposite of what you've always told me. Why would I do? It's different. It's different, and we have to adjust
chessboard, Maynard.
Yeah, and to his credit, he adapted to it. But I don't see him. That was the first time in 20 years of, maybe 25 years of touring for that band, and they had never been to Mexico. So it was the first and only time.
Tool had never been there?
Correct.
Wow.
First and only time, and that was, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago or something. I'm bad with that, but El Tajín Festival for Tool. But he'd tell you about it, and someday I'll take you there and we'll have some wine and talk and do some training, and he'll tell you himself what he felt. But it's a very different perspective, because I didn't experience what he experienced.
Well, and you experience those situations differently. You're conditioned to that and looking for different things. I heard a rumor that you were the one who got Maynard into wine.
Not true.
God damn it, Henry.
Not true. So let me, so
I won't say who told me that, because it was fucking Henry Akins.
Can't trust that guy, man. Fuck that guy. So I came from a job, a detail, where, we get tasked out with other things. And in the task, I was like an errand boy. I did all these things. I taught this guy, firearms. I took care of this person. I did this. Sometimes you're the limo driver. Sometimes you're not.
The jack of all trades.
Yeah. And so I have a very, very, I'm talking about like $1 billion client who drinks red wine, and it's always based on the label. Well, we were in
label, meaning what it looks like.
No, label meaning the house, like what the name. Okay, this is a show-year-old ghee, so it's the best. So they only bought based on brand. right? So they
that's
bought.
how you get expensive piss.
Yeah. So this person in particular wanted, like all people, but especially rock stars and actors, they really one up their game when it comes to other entertainers. So there's constantly parties at the house and the highest level of actors coming over to dinner. And so I get sent out, hey, go buy some red wine, look for Petrus Pomerol, look for Gaia, and so telling me the labels, okay. And I don't know about you, but I feel uncomfortable when I don't understand something. And so I didn't want to understand it, right? So I have that wine one day. The first time I had it was in Malta. So I had this $5,000 bottle of wine in Malta that was left in a hotel room because we cleared the entire top floor for this person, and then they decided they didn't want it, and then they went to a cottage, like a villa off to the side. And so they left all the stuff there, and I said, hey, you left this? I don't give a fuck. That was right. You don't give a fuck?
Can you
know what?
imagine leaving a $5,000 bottle of wine behind and having a barren field of fucks to give? It's like
I'm told the security guy might open that wine and drink it.
I would have done the same thing. Like, looks like house cleaning took it. Don't look in my suitcase.
Yeah. She said, and so we were good to go. So I did that, and this fucking tastes like shit. It was like, so the analogy or the adjective that's commonly referred to for this thing, this Brettanomyces, is called barnyard. Like it's this dirty smell, right? And it's from the specific bacteria that gets in the wine, and it happens throughout France, and they're known for it, and so that becomes what they're used to. And it was nasty. And then we ended up in Sardinia a month later, and in Sardinia I had these phenomenal Italian wines, and I'm like, this was $30 or $50 or $100. This was $5,000. Like, I don't get it. Now, to be fair, I didn't understand a lot of the nuances.
Yeah.
But I wanted to understand, right? Because if you're going to send me to do this thing, I would like to know a little bit about it. And so what I found out is if you go to a sommelier level 1 course, it's not really a somm course. It's like a weekend course, like a Saturday, Sunday. And you learn all the different appellations, the regions in this country, New World, Old World. You learn about different varietals and how they present themselves typically and stuff like that. So you can take that course. You don't get a certificate or a pin or any of that kind of stuff until you get to level 2, 3, 4, or Master Sommelier. So I went to that to learn. And then down the road, I ended up meeting Maynard, and he trained jiu-jitsu and did whatever. And then he was really getting into wine at the time. And at the time, he was drinking like Silver Oak, which is a California cab,
Yeah.
big, very in your face.
I've had some. It's actually delightful.
Famous wine. So very common, right? California cabs are where a lot of Americans go, but they're big and they're in your face, and they're a punch. There's not a lot of nuances or layers to them. It's what they refer to as an oak bomb, right? It's over-oaked, over-extracted wine, and bam, as opposed to something that's changing, that's got a lot of subtleties to it. And they typically do the same varietals, right? So he was doing that, and then he shifted his palate, and he'd say, hey, when you get a chance, taste this. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? And at some point, the most probable course of action, the most dangerous course of action collide, and
there's an intersection of these two vectors.
and at the end of the day, we're sending notes back and forth on stuff, right? So, like, if I'm running around with him, protecting him, I can't be drunk. But then he'd say, well, I'll meet you in Tuscany. There's a guy that used to run Virgin Music. Ken Berry is his name, and he has this. Well, he's a couple massive villas, and he has, local staff, Italians in Tuscany, and he has 2 or 3 vineyards. He said, listen, no one's there. No one knows I'm there. I'll meet you there, and we'll drink wine and eat food, and we'll taste through this stuff and do whatever. And so we had a few of those trips. And so he's probably gone even more refined and into some subtleties that I don't care for, but I'm stuck in Italians, right? So like, the Sangiovese Grosso that Travis has, that one, the Kitsune, that's my favorite.
Which is Japanese for fox.
It is.
Which happens to be your last name, you son of a bitch.
It is my last name. Fuck, holy shit, Kitsune Fox. Yes.
I was going to say, that's why I
have
think
an affinity for that wine, and he showed me respect, and I am very grateful for him taking the time in a project like that. I mean, if you look at like your favorite, the Judith, his mother was Judith, and that's an homage to her. And I'm very grateful
Yeah.
that he did that. That is a very serious thing to do when you're passionate about that subject, and then you name it after a friend. And so, it's a
Don't
big
get me
deal.
wrong. I had my first bottle of the Kitsune. Well, I had more than half of the bottle, but
Like, dude, if you only had half of the Kitsune, something's wrong.
it's good, man. I
on.
have not. I was introduced to it through a buddy of mine. They were looking for property up here. They now live up here, but they came up and stayed with us for probably 2 weeks. But they brought some Seducious, and they brought one of them. It was like you could only get it in the tasting room because I guess it was like a project that didn't go to the handwritten label.
Yes.
So we went through some of that, and I haven't had a ton of it, but probably 20, 30 bottles tasted at least at this point. I have not had a single sip that wasn't unbelievable.
Well, dude's dedicated to it, right? So he's involved in the entire process, and part of that process is, as you're doing right now, trial and error, right? You're drinking it, I like it. I drink it, I don't like it. And then you start to look at the terrain features, and you say, okay, well, this is at 5,000 foot elevation, and it's loam or clay or volcanic intrusion, and we get about this much water, and frost happens then, and you start to figure out, okay, where else on the globe is similar to that they do old world wines. And let's try that. And I wouldn't have done it the way he did. He's crazy because he tried so many different varietals to see what worked, which is dedication. I mean, great, but that's costly, man. Having a vineyard's costly, but really trying that. Because think about this: when you have a new grape, you have these vines. It's going to take 4 years, and maybe you can graft, which is cut off one varietal and another. But 4 years to get a product to figure out if you like it or don't like it. That's
you're
an
eating
investment.
some cash on that for sure.
Huge.
Yeah. You can, I've been Tool. Maynard, I don't know if Maynard would like to know how much of his music fueled the early global war on terrorism, but because, the artist kind of loses a little bit of control of it, but let's just say there was a lot of earbuds ripping some Tool on helicopters.
I hear that. I usually hear Metallica and Slayer and then Tool. Like, those are the three that I hear from military. It's like, yeah.
My first two
smashed into
platoons,
these.
I was surrounded by people who love Tool, so it was like the upbringing. But you can tell the music is different, right? Like you either like Tool or you don't like Tool. It's pretty polarizing, and I can tell, never met the guy, but you can tell he's creative as fuck. And I don't know how, I feel like you can taste that in the wine. It's awesome. I'm incredibly glad that I found it. And over Christmas goddamn, we drank far too much. I think, I'm not joking, we drank 15 bottles.
I don't doubt it, man, but that's dangerous with red wine, man.
And
blowing your head off.
Oh, for sure. But we were nerding out over, the difference in taste, but you could probably see one, section of the vineyard from the other one. But, they all, you know what I mean? Just in how much of a variation and a difference in the flavor and all that stuff, but it's all probably the same zip code.
It's huge. So think about this in terms of people, okay? Think about varietals as people. And so you're a white guy, black guy, a Latin guy, whatever. They're the people, they're the DNA, because they're generally going to express a certain way. They're going to come out a certain way. And then you have an environment, right? So like if it's cold weather, people typically dress a certain way or behave a certain way. If it's warm weather, a different way. Yep. And then you have the nurturing, right? And the nurturing typically happens, it can happen on the vine by pruning and taking care of stuff and row spacing so air flows. But like you're talking about, it's microclimates, right? So this little area gets a little bit more sun at a different angle and gets a little bit more water, because typically at the top gets more sun, at the bottom gets more water. And then the air pattern may flow a certain way that these get more air and have less bunch rot or something like that on the grapes, or they prune it so much it turns into raisins. So it gets managed there, but then the upbringing or the people that surround you that influence you, right, would be in the cellar, right? Because you think about what type of oak is used, right? So first, what type of varietal is it? How did you grow it? What did you do? Now, how long is it on skin contact? What's the maceration process? What are you adding to it? All this kind of stuff. And then it goes into this barrel, and this barrel is a specific wood. So this wood, usually oak. It's oak from Missouri, oak from parts of France, oak from parts of Slovakia. Those are the most common. Now, take that oak and have neutral oak, You can have a light toast on it. You can have a medium toast, a dark toast. So that influences what it imparts on it. And it's old barrels or new barrels and the toasting and the wood and the region. So now that's affecting that as well. And then how long do you keep it in barrel? So barrel age X and then bottle age X. And then how does it mix with the air once it's opened up, right? And certain things are prone to go quick. We had a World War II vintage French wine not too long ago. They took off with a saber, and it was crazy. It was a little austere, and it blew off, and it was phenomenal in 2 minutes. And in 3.5 minutes, it was vinegar. Like it went through all the cycles that quick. So World War II vintage first growth Bordeaux that was off the charts, and then piss.
I've never described a wine as austere, but I'm going to start doing that immediately. I do wine reviews. I have no training whatsoever. And I tell myself and everybody else that I'm a master sommelier. And most of the time,
there's 650 in the world, by the way.
51. It's not a big deal. I took the online course. I actually had nerded out on the Somm video series.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. A couple of those dudes I would like to hold by their tie and just fucking knock their teeth.
Because part of it, as you go up the levels, is pomp and circumstance, and they're selling you bullshit. It's about service and this dog and pony show. I'm not down with that. I don't care about that.
I'd rather celebrate the wine absent the pomp and circumstance.
The thing about wine is it's who you were with, what was happening at the time you were with them. Like, it's not just the wine. Just like with your buddies, you can have the shittiest situation on earth.
But have at the time of your life.
Yeah. Think about that.
Yeah. No, I love that connection. One of these days, we're going to be, they'll be tonight. You'll meet them. The people who introduced me to his wine.
Okay.
And we're already like, we need to go to Jerome, but we need to drive because the amount of wine that we're going to bring back is not going to fit.
Hey, this is a plug, Maynard, just so you know I'm selling these guys your wine.
First off, I might have turned the lights on and off at the cellars in the past few months just for a couple of days. Maynard, I love your wine. It's amazing. And I'm going to come buy a shit ton more of it at some point.
Yeah, listen, when you go out, just let me know so I can link up with you and keep you away from him.
Okay, fair.
No, when you go out, the thing is, he's got so many. He's got a great restaurant called Osteria. He's got a great tasting room, Caduceus tasting room up in Jerome. Great bottles. You'll find stuff there you won't find other places. He's got a pizza truck, and he's got an ice cream truck, and he's got a place down in Scottsdale in Old Town. All the products are great because his attention to detail and his care and concern about those things is pretty big. And you see when someone dumps everything into it. He's not just checking a box, right? This isn't, whoever, the flavor of the moment. I know Vince Neil had a wine. I know Pink Floyd had a wine. Everybody's got a wine.
Wines, tequilas, but they just company.
Yes. Yeah.
He's a jiu-jitsu player as well, isn't he?
He's a purple belt. Yeah, he's been training
at it.
He started in 95 and then quit and then started and quit. And so one of the problems with touring is that you're going to new cities, new places, whatever, and you have a target on your back when you're a rock star. Everybody wants to kick the rock star's ass.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And this is their tool right here.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that.
So think about this. You go somewhere and somebody wants to say, I beat Maynard's ass. So it's not a very good thing. So when I started working for him, I got him to start coming to schools with me. And what I would do is I would train him, I'd roll with everybody.
Yeah.
But I would have him not do so much of the rolling with people we didn't know. And then in certain markets, like a guy like Travis, I would say, hey, Travis is the right size. He's calm. He's relaxed. He's technical. Okay, you can go over here and roll with Travis because he's not going to try to hurt you or whatever. But he'd do the technique class with everybody else. And then he'd go over there and roll or work on something with Travis or whoever it may be.
That's super fair. I mean,
it's a smart approach, right? Why would you go in your mid-50s to have your head ripped off by some 20-year-old who doesn't get it?
Who wants to use you as a little gold star check mark on their wall of fame or shame?
Not smart. Not smart.
You think he'll quit again, or is he going to stick it?
No, he's going to stick it out.
Good.
So, he's been on and off, and he actually started a school called Verde Valley Jiu-Jitsu. So if you come out and you link up with me in advance, we'll go to the school, we'll roll around at the school, and then we'll go drink wine. And that's a good weekend.
I don't know if there's a better description of a activity for a day than that.
Yeah, it'll be a good day. It'll be a good day. And we'll go by the cellar and the warehouse, and we'll eat at the Osteria and get fat and happy. Usually when I walk out, I look like me now, 175, but by the time I walk out, I look close to you.
Just
Yeah,
so
yoked.
not yoked. Yeah. Fuck, we've been at it for almost 3 hours, but I love asking very experienced jiu-jitsu people this. Any advice for people who are looking to start, or for people who have started, the headspace that maybe would help them last the course? Because I have heard that blue belts are the black belts of quitters, and the number of people who start, and not that the black belt should be the end state, but the number of people who get to the end of that journey, pretty goddamn low.
Yeah, I think it's simple. You don't quit. You keep coming. You try to manage injuries. You look at who you want to emulate. You try to emulate them. And you try to roll with people that you like. So you don't want to roll with the guy that's an asshole. You don't want to roll with people that are just shitty people. So surround yourself and find the right gym, because that's huge. If you find the right gym, I stumbled, pure luck, to meet Rodrigo. If he wasn't next to the recruiting station, I wouldn't know him.
Or if somebody was there teaching jiu-jitsu but was an asshole, you'd have been like, fuck this.
Yeah. So find the right school, find the right group of people, find the things that you like in it. It's not one size fits all. I don't think that anybody can learn jiu-jitsu, but I don't think it's for everybody, right? If your mentality is not in line with jiu-jitsu, it doesn't work. But you can learn it if you want it, and you will adapt to it. So I think it's gym, people, style, managing injuries, and then after that, trying to have fun. Like we talked about today, like, yeah, I'm going to come to the school, your school, I don't know the guys. If I go in there and smash everybody up, I mean, like, that fucking Todd Fox, fuck that asshole. But if I go in there and I'm rolling with him and I kind of put him in a position, but don't do anything, and say, look, this is how you stop it. 2 of your guys today, immediately, I reapplied it just to test.
Yeah.
2 of your guys immediately, bam, correction, automatic. Oh, fuck, I never thought about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So trying to share knowledge, and that's another thing some guys do really well with, is they learn it and then they do best at teach backs, and that really helps kind of solidify. I find that people asking questions, why are you doing this? Why does this work? I don't make up an answer. I either know the answer, or I think through it, or I say, I don't know, I'll find out and I'll test it. And I think for jiu-jitsu, if you take that approach, you have some fun, you have good people, you learn a skill or a style of jiu-jitsu, because there's so many styles, as you know. And then you just slowly increase it. Again, back to chunking, right? Like, take this block, and then I put this block on top, and then the next block. And then before you know it, 25 years has gone by. And you or me say, I don't know. This is one way to do it. I don't know the best way. And like I said to you today as well, like, I don't even know the names of most moves today. Like, I don't know what that's called. Like, I know the position, I know the angle, I know, but just stick with it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that there's a better solution than just stay the course. It certainly pays dividends. I've never had something in my life ever that gave so much, short of my father, that just literally dividends, right? Because your physical fitness, confidence, strength, right? Think about just how you feel when you know you can defend yourself from any position. Yeah. I mean, what does that? Every day is a good day. Even when you have the shittiest day in jiu-jitsu, you learn something, it's great. Shitty jiu-jitsu days. Think about that. I mean,
they exist, people.
I've never had one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've heard about them. I only have them on days that end in Y, generally. Yeah. Yeah, there's some rough days. The beginning is not, it's not pleasure-filled, and it's not comfortable, but I think that's...
But if you like learning and you like getting better,
it's amazing.
It's guaranteed improvement. One guy in all of, I've come across thousands of people in jiu-jitsu. I've trained at maybe 150 academies across the world, from Africa, Iraq. I'll come back to you on the name. There's a gym in Erbil.
Yeah.
I've trained all over. Everywhere I see guys learning and getting better progressively. There was one guy ever in my history that didn't, and his name was Pablo, and he trained at the first school I was at. Pablo never got better. 6 months, he quit. I saw Pablo 3 months ago. He's a brown belt now. He picked jiu-jitsu back up in Florida, and he's a badass.
Awesome.
He couldn't learn anything for the first 6 months. Whatever was in his head, that hurdle, that obstacle, that wall, he found a way around it by just perseverance. I'm not quitting. I'm going back to this and doing it again.
And who knows what was going on in his life? Maybe he had something external that was preventing him from learning.
Massive factor, because all of us with injuries and lives and all of the people around us and what's happening with work, and your jiu-jitsu is going to be like this. Your jiu-jitsu is never like this. Even if it's going in that general direction, it's up and down in that general direction, right?
Yeah.
No exceptions.
Well, I can't thank you enough for coming out, man. This has been awesome.
I appreciate you having me, and good rolling with you too. I would like to take your time to plug a book.
Yes, please. Damn it, I meant to ask you about it. Fire away.
Now, Andy hasn't seen this, so this is kind of impromptu, but the name of the book is Protection Forum from Humanity, and this book has nothing to do with touring. This book has some really simple, super simple, common, basic principles, practices that are used in security, that are used in the military, that are used in law enforcement. You're going to be familiar with most of the content here. In fact, I'll show you right now. But we got a couple different plugs by some people that you may know. I know you know that one.
Yep.
This guy was a team guy. He's a Team 4 guy.
Yep.
This FBI, SWAT, and a couple other people. But if you look at this, I think you'll probably recognize most of the things on there. So the reason for this book is guys always ask, how do I do this? How do I do that? I can't teach you. You need to take a full course on everything that's in the book. But what I can do is give you exposures, right? So to show you a little bit about this, right? One of the things, for example, we're talking about earlier, human intelligence collection and things like that.
Yeah.
MICE is in there, right? We're looking at motives for human compromise, right? Money, ideology, coercion, ego, or extortion. Like those are the things that anywhere in the world you can catch somebody on one of those things. And so you know where they're weak. That's their chink in the armor, which means that's what I have to worry about for the teams that I'm building. And same thing for you at home, talking about layered security approach. Where do you put things? How do you put them there? Some people will say, oh, it's too simple. It's too basic. It's whatever. Like, no, this is the core of it.
Simple and basic is what works. Complicated and, robust, that shit falls apart when pressure is applied.
No, this is not robust. This is touching on, hey, here's the guard. Here's one position from the guard. Here's the mount. Here's one position from that. It's just an exposure to stuff. And then whoever reads it can take off and go do a class at this training center or that training center. They can read more books on the subject matter. But this will get you, if you know nothing, say you never served in the military or law enforcement, you're like, holy shit, this is an unstable environment. How do I start to set up security around my house? How do I start to think about moving with people? What's going to happen? How do I deal with things like barricading myself? How do I deal with things happening on the move? So what's going to happen in my head? How do I deal with stress? So stress inoculation elements, just simple points. So this books are not a moneymaker, and I'm sure you know that. But we do also training. So you can find us or email us at info@tourprotection.com.
And I'll put all this in the show notes and stuff too. So Perfect. It's an easy push button.
Perfect. So we do a lot of small groups, under 10 people, and a lot of one-on-one. And so I talked to you today about the Navy commander that wanted to do specific things. So we're doing one-on-one training because one-on-one is 400% faster than group.
Doesn't surprise me at all.
So we do that. So just two things to point out there. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, man. It's good to talk to you. Good to roll with you.
We'll do it again for sure. And
100%.
Then shortly after this, we'll do Guinness.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Understand the west bank of the river?
That's A firm, west bank. It gives me kill. Still give it to me in the grove.
Okay, one's in from the north. I've got the west bank of the river. Two's going to give it to you in the grove.
Roger, give me that gun run. Right along that bag, baby.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, whether you're listening on an audio-only platform or you're watching on YouTube. I appreciate that you take the time every week to tune in. People ask me a lot, what can they do to help me spread the word? And the answer is actually embedded in the question. The biggest thing you guys can do to help me, if you enjoy the podcast and you think it would be helpful to others, is subscribe and share it with other people. And if you have the time, go on to Apple Podcasts and leave me a rating and a review. If you think the podcast sucks, tell me it sucks and leave a 0-star review or the lowest stars possible. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion, you can go to clearedhotpodcast.com. And there is a contact me button right there, which will land in my inbox. And the last thing, if people are interested in helping out, what you can do is fly the old flag. And by that, I don't mean an actual flag, because I don't have any of those. I'm talking about t-shirts or sweatshirts or hats, whatever it may be. Again, clearedhotpodcast.com. Click on the shop tab, and hopefully something in there looks like it would be an item you would like to wear around town. And then you can tell people what it is when they ask you. But that is it. The biggest thing I can say is thank you. I truly appreciate it. And until next time, see ya.